2022 regular meeting. Call the meeting to order. First up is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting on January 24th. Commission, any corrections, additions, comments? If none, we'll consider those to be approved. All right, next up, public hearings. We do have several here tonight. Okay. First public hearing is going to be the Nathan Stencil rezoning special use permit, preliminary plat, final plat, and site plan 2021-50. And John will be presenting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to rearrange the whole desktop here to where I want it to be and lose everything. So let's try it one more time. I guess that's going to stay on that side. All right. So the first public hearing we have tonight is a consideration of a couple of different actions related to an apartment complex proposed by Nathan Stencil Development Group. This is the location we're looking at here. This is 3rd Street to the north, Bailey Street, Bailey Parkway, which goes along the railroad spur to the east, 4th Street to the south. This is Tyler Street over here, and then a few residential properties directly to the west of it. So the actions we have before your consideration tonight include a rezoning of the property, rezoning it from I-1 Industrial Park to DC Downtown Core, a couple of special use permits pertaining to the shoreline ordinance, one for having a building over 5 units in size, the other one for impervious surface coverage over 25%, preliminary and final plat, and then the site plan for construction of the building. So I'll go through a little bit of background here, then go through the individual permit requests. Looking at the project, the comprehensive plan guides this area for mixed-use high residential, so this proposal conforms with our comprehensive plan. We did make a change to that late last year. The zoning of the property currently is I-1 Industrial Park. The rezoning to DC also conforms with our zoning code. When you take a look at the existing condition of the property, there's a couple of different things going on here. You've got a house located to the western side here at 404 3rd Street East that was purchased by the Stencils for incorporation into the development. And then you have these properties over here, which are currently owned by HEDRA, the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority. We are under contract with Mr. Stencil to purchase those properties from HEDRA. And one of the requirements of that is to get the land use entitlement. So that is under contract with HEDRA for purchase. History of that site used to be former UBC property. This large storage building here was used by UBC and most recently by the city of Hastings for storage. As of today, I think it's mostly down. So we did sell the building at auction to another individual who moved it off site. So that was what the site would consist of itself. The home here would be demolished. This property here is demolished. To the north here is kind of an unfinished parking lot area that would be incorporated into it. There was a neighborhood meeting that was held on this property back in December of last year to be able to introduce the proposal to the neighborhood. At that time, about 5 residents attended, sharing concerns about the height of the building, balconies, setback to residential area, and long-term ownership of the property. We did provide notification this time to everyone within 350 feet of the property. We received one email in support of the application, which is included in your packet. So what are we looking at here for applications? This is kind of a look at the property right now. You can see the residential properties to the west, the building coming down the former UBC storage here, looking to the northwest by the Bailey Bike Trail. This is looking east from Tyler Street, back behind some of the residential homes towards the site itself. This is looking from 3rd Street south. This is another building that the city owns, part of the old UBC site that we still use for storage. And then this is looking north towards the river and 2nd Street. This is Hastings Art Space over here. Right in front of it is a 100-space parking lot owned by the city. And then the bicycle trail located here. So first thing we're looking at is rezoning of the property. We're looking to rezone the property from industrial to downtown core. Downtown core is in purple here, so you can see that a lot of the surrounding property to the north is already zoned downtown core. This district accommodates both residential and commercial, looking at higher density properties within the downtown area. And as you take a look around the property, the remaining property to the west is zoned industrial park, and property to the south is zoned commercial. You may wonder why the heck the property is zoned industrial park. It really never was industrial. It's a good question. I suppose the operation of UBC may have been termed that at some time with their outside storage activities, but certainly does not contemplate the current or what we want as a future use of the property. So we are recommending approval of the rezoning on the property itself. The other aspect we have here relates to special use permits. I'll go back to here. Within the Shoreland Code, there's a couple of, there's requirements for development when things are located within certain distances of lakes and rivers, properties within 300 feet of Lake, or 1,000 feet of Lake Isabel, so there are certain requirements that come into play here. One dealing with special use permit for any structure over 5 units in size. That one, frankly, is a mystery to me. I don't know why that's in there, but it's a template ordinance that we are given to by the state. This is over 5 units, as are other properties within the downtown. The impervious surface coverage is one that we look at. We certainly don't want to be in a position in which we are adding unnecessarily to the impervious surface coverage in an area. Given this downtown site and its dense nature and the fact that most of it is hard surface to begin with and doesn't have any drainage facilities or stormwater treatment on the site right now, and post-development it will increase the impervious surface slightly, going from 78% to 88% on the site. However, the stormwater management of this site as water leaves is going to be in a better condition. So looking at those two, we are recommending approval of both special use permits. Looking at this as transforming a former industrial site into residential development, having stormwater management, which does not currently exist, as some of the major reasons behind it. Looking at the preliminary and final plat, very simplistic there. We're taking a number of residential lots that are part of the original Hastings plat and replatted them into a single lot of record. So no streets, really no public facilities within there. And there would be a vacation of an alleyway, which is shown here, which is something the city council will review as part of the plat application when this gets before them. This would be subject to a stormwater maintenance agreement as well on the property. There are some trail encroachments towards the north that we'll need to make sure are taken care of as part of the plat agreement. Parkland dedication would be paid here. We did have the Park and Recreation Commission review the plat on February 8th, and their recommendation was the payment of cash in lieu of land, and then there's payment of some sewer interceptor fees as well. A lot of the individual site review will be done as part of the site plan itself. We are recommending approval of the plat. And now getting into the site plan. What Stencil is proposing to do is to build a 4-story residential building over a first floor of at-grade parking, so a total of about 5 stories altogether. This is how the site lays out here. When you look at this, this is the building itself that comes around, parking area to the east. There is a raised outdoor patio play area here above the at-grade parking. So the at-grade foundation goes something like this, and then this is cut out at the first floor for activities, and then the building goes up 4 stories from there. So this is what it would look like on the site itself. When we take a look at vehicular access and circulation, 3rd Street access would come in from the east, go into the parking lot, and continue around via a one-way south to 4th Street. There would also be an access here into the at-grade parking, which would be located at this facility. So those would be the 2 access points. From a building setback standpoint, within the downtown core district, there's not prescribed minimum setbacks. Looking at the setbacks that are being proposed here, they are pretty tight, being within the downtown area. To the north, it's about 5 to 18 feet to the 3rd Street property line. To the east, about 65 feet to Bailey Street, 10 feet down the south towards 4th Street. And then when you're looking to the west area to some of the residential, it's pretty tight. It gets down to 5.5 to 7 feet when you get to the property line itself. Pedestrian access to the site, you've got the Hastings MRT Trail, which comes through to the north and around the site here. Site access will be provided here. We're also asking for another access point down here along 4th Street to provide access to that, so trail access is good on the site. Looking at parking within the downtown area, areas that are zoned downtown core are applicable to a different parking standard than what we have in the rest of the city. We can utilize shared parking standards via the Urban Land Institute and ITE. Those standards would have between 1.2 and 1.5 units parking spaces per unit. What they're proposing here is 1.2, which is within that range, and we're recommending that that is acceptable per the code and the ability to use those shared parking. Looking architectural design of the project, this is a image here kind of showing the height. Height of the project is about 55 feet here from foundation to roof. And then this shows the setback here, about 70 or so feet back from that to some of the 2-story structures. And then this shows another 3-story structure within the neighborhood. That is the CDA building. This is what the building would look like itself. It would be primarily brick with some metal, limited use of cementitious siding, which is kind of this light gray area. The window sizing and placement has been designed to reduce the massing of the building and meet some of the historic patterns of the downtown. So it meets a couple of requirements we have. One is the Heart of Hastings design standards, which are necessary as part of the downtown core district. The other one is our architectural standards via zoning, which has different material requirements on it, and this certainly meets that with the design of the property. So when we're taking a look at this, this is the view to the east towards Bailey. This is the main entrance. This is the north towards 3rd Street towards the Red Rock Corridor parking lot. I guess this is the main entrance. It's right, that's the side of it. This is the south towards 3rd Street. You can see this portion of the building is directly on 4th Street. This is set back quite a distance here because of the kind of funky shape of the building. And then this would be facing west. So you can see the ground floor here of the parking and then the units above it here. This provides a little better representation of what it would look like here from looking from the east, the main entrance here towards the east side of the building towards Bailey. And this is what it would look like from the west side of the building, the residential area being over here, the ones where the houses are closest to it. So that's how this lays out. We are recommending approval of the site plan based upon the conditions in the report itself. So, Commissioners, this is a public hearing tonight for various activities related to land use. You may open that at this time, or I could stand for any questions. I will note that Nathan Stencil and Pete Stencil from Stencil Development are here if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. All right, and this is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Couple ground rules for the public hearing. If you're going to speak, you need to come up to the podium, and you need to give your full name and address. And we don't want to have any dialogue back and forth between where people are seated and staff up here. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, we want to do it at the podium so it gets on the record. Okay? All right, so the public hearing is open. Does anyone wish to speak? Go ahead and raise your hand. No one? This is also on Zoom as well. Do we have anybody on Zoom raising their hand?
Yeah, I'm looking at Zoom right now. I don't know if there's any individuals on Zoom that wish to address this. I know I did talk to one individual there that had some questions earlier, but not sure if he wishes to address the commission at this time.
Okay.
And I don't see anything here.
Okay. All right. Seeing as there's no one to speak, we'll go ahead and close this public hearing. And I'll open it up for commissioners. And if you can kind of raise your hand, because I can't see all the red lights through the plexiglass. So, commissioners, any comments, concerns?
Yeah, I do have, excuse me, Commissioners, I do have one hand that did go up here if you'd like to take that at this time.
Oh, we got a hand up? All right, we'll go ahead and jump back into the public hearing real quick.
All right, then I will have Clarence Chapman joining the meeting here, and he should be up in just a moment. Okay, Clarence, if you unmute, you're on and you're all set.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just had a question. I noted that John mentioned this building would be 55 feet high. In all the two meetings I've been involved with so far, the developer said it would be no more than 48 feet high. I'm wondering what the explanation is that it's going to be taller than 48 feet now.
And Mr. Chair, what I might do is invite Mr. Stencil up to the podium at the conclusion to answer any questions that come up.
Do we have anybody else?
Clarence, does that conclude your comments?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I just would like an explanation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so he was the only one then, John?
Yes, that's the only one I have here.
Okay, so we'll go ahead. Can you raise your hands? Who's here for this? Mr. Stencil? Oh, okay, no problem. You want to go ahead and answer Mr. Chapman's question about the difference in height between the 48 and the 55?
Thank you. Nathan Stencil, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 5700 Josh Wyatt Drive. So at the neighborhood group meeting that was held, I don't know how long ago, more than a month ago, we were still working through some issues on site design in regards to bedrock, a significant amount of bedrock on the site, plus the water retention that we were going to have to be doing on site. We're still probably a little up in the air on the final height. We're going to do everything we can to get the building down as low as possible within reason. But just for the sake of this purpose, we wanted to come forward with a worst-case scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You want to go ahead and just hang on tight there for a second?
Absolutely.
If there's nobody else on Zoom, okay, nobody here. Commissioners, we'll go ahead and open up for discussion to Mr. Stencil's at the podium if you have any questions for him. Commissioner LeBron?
Okay, yeah, so I just have two quick questions regarding the trail. Number one, I'm aware through other means of a potential Vermilion River Greenway project on that bike trail actually that goes on the east side of the site.
Yep.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that'll be a Dakota County project. So just make sure you're aware of that and then any coordination that needs to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Basically.
Yeah, definitely.
And then related to that, this being in close proximity to, the Hastings Trail System, I was wondering if it would be a possibility that you might consider adding some bike parking or bike storage as well?
Oh, yeah, we'll have a significant amount within the building itself and then some outside too.
Sure.
But it's pretty standard for these buildings, and obviously the trail is one of our biggest amenities to the site, so we want to do everything we can to take advantage of that and be a good neighbor to the trail, so.
Sure, fantastic. And then sort of related, parking-wise, I was also wondering if there was any consideration to any electric vehicle charging stations.
We will definitely have them. We put them in every building now,
Okay.
so, yep.
All right, that's all.
All right, thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Commissioners, any other questions, comments? Commissioner Tyken?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The stormwater, are you gonna do underground? Is that where we're gonna handle
Yeah,
that?
yes.
So it's gonna be better than we have today, right? Actually,
Yeah, not that it'll take much on the site in its current form, but no, I mean, it'll be of the highest standard of retention that is, up to code and everything that we need to do, so.
Okay, and then, John, we notified all the residents, right? And
We did, yes.
my concern is I don't know, 3 or 4 houses right next to it. They're gonna have a huge building in their backyard. But it's zoned those houses are zoned I2?
Yeah, they are zone industrial park, yeah, industrial. So within the course of this application, there's been 3 public hearing notices that have been sent out. Well, 3 notices, one for the neighborhood meeting that Mr. Stencil sent out, one for the comprehensive plan amendment, and then one for the actions tonight.
And nobody from those houses
Yep.
responded, or?
If you'd like, I can answer this one, John, but, So we have been, well, we acquired one of the homes already, Tim Rowan was the name of the owner. And that's where kind of this L that comes out is in that area. And then we've reached out to everyone else on the block in attempting to buy all of their homes. Mr. Tim McNeely here, he had moved in, and him and his family moved into a home in about, I think, around August. Weren't really aware of everything that was going on with the site. So we've been in communication with him on, once we get through the proper steps here, we're going to be working with them to acquire their home and allow them to move to a location that they prefer. Unfortunately, the other people that were in the block did not, well, I shouldn't say, two of them did not reply at all after many attempts. One of them did and just said they're not interested. Because ideally, we would have liked to have them all so that we could expand the building footprint, not be so tight to the lot lines on the other side. Unfortunately, we didn't have any interest to sell. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, this is a great reason why people should show up if they don't like something or they like something.
Yeah.
That would be my only concern, and it sounds like we did proper notification and you actually talked to most of the people, so.
Yeah, and we, like I said, we wanted to acquire as much of the block as possible. And in fact, unfortunately, we only have one person, but we're gonna follow through and work with them, since they weren't aware of the situation and they'd prefer not to have this in their backyard. We understand, we wanna be good neighbors. We're gonna work with them to help them, not have that in their,
Yeah.
to get rid of the new home and to move on, so.
Thanks, I do appreciate it, and, I mean, this is great. It's great to see a site that's been vacant for so long actually be productive back in our community, so I appreciate you guys
Excited.
taking this project on, and I guess I'm in full support of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Tyken. Commissioner Peters.
This is just a question, a general kind of zoning question, but if the portion where the building is going up or potentially go up would be rezoned to downtown core, would it not make sense to change the zoning for the rest of it from I-2? Because it doesn't seem like there'd be anything within that block that would be representative or necessary for I-2. Would that ever be rezoned? Or is it, not up for discussion because of potential plans to purchase those properties in the future?
Good question, Commissioner. Yes, certainly the I-1 designation on the zoning does not match anything that's there now, nor anything we want to have in the future. On their comprehensive plan, that area, I think, is designated for mid-density development. The difficulty in rezoning prior to what might happen on it is, you may zone it to something, and then it may have a different use in the future. Right now, I don't have any indication that the existing zoning is causing any ill effects to the properties there. If it did, that would be a time to consider the zoning. Other than that, it's more of a wait and see to see what might happen on that block.
Okay, Commissioner Peters. Commissioner Romans.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for Mr. Stencil. You mentioned about either purchasing the properties or have purchased the properties next to them. Just out of curiosity, do you have plans for what that may be? Is it just,
Yeah.
will you keep the houses there, raise them? What's the general thought?
So the home that we've already acquired is actually, the building is, it'll be gone. The building footprint covers it. And that house was key to getting it, getting the building to the density we really require to make a project like this work. This other home that we're gonna be acquiring is more of a mid-block house that's much smaller, doesn't do a lot for a use of parking. We are still exploring what the final results of that are. I don't know if we'll buy it and use it as a tear down to create more green space, or if we'll buy it and create some green space and then still rent the home out or something, so we're not removing it from the housing stock in the community. We're still trying to you know, we want to get everything we need here approved and then move forward and start exploring those options.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I was just curious on that when you brought that up, but otherwise, I love the aesthetic of the building. I think it fits very well. I kind of like the brick, kind of matching other places downtown, so.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any other questions? All right, seeing none, entertain a motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, here. I know we've got several actions related to
Yep.
the approvals here, so it's up to the individual maker of the motion if you would like to include all 4 of the actions for rezoning, special use permits, preliminary final plat, and site plan. Per the recommendations, you may opt to do that. If you want to do them individually, that's an option as well. So I'll leave that up to the maker of the motion.
Sounds good. I mean, they're all closely related to one another, so. Commissioner Halbert?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to approve the rezoning, special use permit, preliminary plat, and final plat site plan for 2021-50 Stencil Edition flats on Third.
And is that for all 4?
Yes.
Okay, for all 4?
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Romans?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay. And John, do we need to do a roll call, or can we do a voice vote? Since we're all
We could do
here?
voice vote. We're all in person.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and do a voice vote today. So commissioners, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and Commissioners, this recommendation will move forward to the City Council. At the next meeting of the council on the 22nd of February, they will take action on first reading and ordering a public hearing for the rezoning, and then the actions for land use would come before them on their first meeting in March. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. All right, we have another public hearing next. This one is for Enclave Companies, rezoning preliminary plat, final plat, and site plan 2022-12 for County Crossroads, 4th edition, apartments, 300 block at 33rd Street West. And for this one, it looks like we're ready to go.
All right, thank you. This proposal to construct 2 apartment buildings includes 3 general requests. The first is to rezone it from C4 to R4, preliminary and final plat approval, and site plan for the 2 apartment buildings and garages. The subject property was guided and zoned commercial for many years without any interest in development, though there was interest for development of residential on the site. The site was specifically studied during the last comprehensive plan update, and at that time, it was changed from commercial to medium-density residential, which allows for both either R3 or R4 residential zoning. The C4 zoning that the site has currently is called Regional Shopping Center and allows for commercial, retail, and service businesses. The R4 is higher density residence that allows medium to high density residential, particularly when the buildings have a single entrance, like apartment buildings or condominiums. Either the R3 or the R4 would allow the density that's being proposed, with the difference being R4 is generally guided for buildings with the one entrance, and R3 is more for multiple entrance buildings like townhomes, 8-plex units, things like of that nature. The Cary Park, I'll go back to the other map. To the south is the Cary Park subdivision, which is zoned R3, PRD, Planned Residential Development, making this site being one density designation up from there, which would be a good transition between the residential and the commercial district. Aside from the subject property, there's still 6.31 acres of vacant commercial property in this area for future development. There's also a similar amount of commercial redevelopment potential sites in the area. This is the future land use map. The star is the subject property, and you can see it's guided towards medium density residential. Those blue stars are vacant land that's still zoned and guided for commercial development. This is an aerial picture of the site. You can see those blue stars and the properties that are guided towards commercial and vacant, and then some of the area businesses around this area. And these are some of the photographs taken from the shopping center area. This is the entrance from Vermilion. You can see some of the businesses in that entrance there. And this is from 33rd Street, looking to the south of the subject property. This is looking more west from that same street. And this is looking north from Tiffany Drive. There's currently, this is where a path from that subdivision extends to the north into that property. And then this is looking from the parking lot to the east of the strip mall. This is a picture of the plat that's being proposed. Just for some background on platting, a preliminary plat will organize the parcels of land to prepare them for a developable subdivision. And they're reviewed at this time to determine if they meet all the ordinance requirements for land subdivision. And the final plat would be approval of the final plat would be the official creation of the plat to be recorded with the county. And at that time, it would obligate development fees from the owner, and it would allow them approval for construction of approved construction plans. In many cases like this one, they're proposing the preliminary plat and the final plat at the same time. So just some features to point out on this plat is some of these areas that are circled are just highlighting drainage and utility easements for mostly utilities that are present there. There's creation of this outlot A, which would be between the subject apartment buildings and the Cary Park subdivision to the south, which is used for detention ponds. There's one currently here to the east. That's where the drainage comes from most of the shopping center currently. And then to the west would be more for the drainage from this site here. And yeah, it shows just some other drainage utility easements. This is an aerial picture of the site with the overlay of the proposed site plan in white. The blue circles are kind of highlighting the connectivity to area streets and the shopping center. This red circle to the north here is showing a deletion of a driveway that currently comes through the site back into the shopping center, which likely was serving more for future parcels that they thought would have developed back in the 1990s when this area was developing commercially. It doesn't really add a lot to connectivity into the site because the very next main entrance comes right into the center of the shopping center. They're still maintaining that as an entrance to the north parking lot for this proposal. And then the existing drive between 33rd Street and Vermilion Street will be maintained and repaved. There's a red circle in this area highlighting an area of concern for Terry's Hardware that they're working with applicants on making sure that they will have turning radius and ability to unload their commercial deliveries in that location. The bottom here is just showing the existing ponding basin, and it's highlighting the connection of that existing sidewalk from Cary Park up through into the site with connections to get into the shopping center area. And this is just the actual site plan, and it's got a couple of things to highlight here. There's some trash enclosures that we're looking to get some a little bit more detail on. And these blue ovals are showing where probably are missing sidewalk connections. This building 2, which is at the south, doesn't have a connection through the sidewalk to get to the north or to the east. In addition to that, the building 1 is the building with all the amenities for recreation. And if that building if those tenants have access to that building, they should at least actually have sidewalk connection to get there, but they may also want to consider having another entrance on the back of the building so they could get there more easily, or swapping and putting the main entrance on the back side of the building and kind of redesigning the configuration of that building. Oh, and I missed these. Also, there's no loading zone shown on the site plan near the entrance to the building. You know, with buildings, you know, this size, you might have a lot of unloading or dropping off of people, but probably more likely is going to be a lot of deliveries from packages to the tenants. And the only place really for those people to park right now would be in front of parking spaces or garage doors or the driving aisle. There is this one area here that maybe one could be incorporated into. It's not terribly far from the main entrance, otherwise actually at the entrance. And then same thing with building number 2. It may impact 10 parking spaces or so if it had to be done in areas that have parking currently. But it's fairly important. This is a picture of another building in town here that was built recently that has a loading zone, so you could envision a delivery truck being parked there for a little bit while they're delivering packages without causing any issues with vehicles. And then as far as parking goes, they are required to have, based on the 211 units, 422 spaces under our current parking requirements, which is 2 spaces for every 1 unit. They're proposing 391 spaces, which is a ratio of about 1.85. And according to their projects that they develop, that's enough spaces for what they see at their sites. But in order to meet our requirements, we have to, meet what's in the code currently. In the shopping center area, there's an existing easement that allows cross-access and parking. And as I'm sure you probably would assume, there's ample parking in that shopping area to meet their deficiency to the 2 spaces per unit. Even if it's not needed, it'll at least meet that. And then as far as architectural standards go, for medium density residential, they're required to have a certain percent class 1 materials, which would be glass and masonry type materials, and then 25% class 2 materials, which would be more imitation materials that look like primary materials, or in this case, they're proposing fiber cement board siding, which is considered a class 2 use. And so all 4 sides of their buildings will meet that requirement, not just the ones that are required to facing streets and residential areas. I have them labeled on one of these slides, but these are some renderings of what the building would look like. It's 3 stories tall, and it would have detached garages that would be white fiber cement siding and black doors and roofs. This is the architectural materials. There'd be white and black horizontal fiber cement siding, and I believe this is maybe a board and batten fiber cement product. It labels that brown is wood and brick and glass. There's several more pictures in your packets of the different elevations. The landscaping plan shows a berm as required between a parking lot and a street on the north, and then on the south between the area that's for the ponding basins and between there and the residences to the south is a thick barrier of evergreen trees of mixed varieties. They have quite a bit of landscape islands in the parking lots and on the ends of the garages. I think the only place that one was missed as per the zoning ordinance is in this north parking lot. On the south side, there's extent of more than 30 spaces without a landscape island, so just one more is needed there. And notification was sent, published and sent to property owners within 350 feet. We didn't receive any comments other than Terry's Hardware reaching out to them for concerns for making sure they have maintained access to their building with deliveries. So with that, there's a public hearing required for this request, and staff can answer any questions you'd have.
Okay, thanks, Justin. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have anybody here? Okay, sounds good. Come on up, and then name and address if you will.
Okay. My name is Shay Holm, and I live at 378 Cary Park Lane. And I think I only have one question, and the question is the ponding basin that's behind Cary Park Lane, will that remain as is? I think is my only question. Let me make sure. And I guess I'm just kind of curious too if we know kind of like a price point area. I don't know if that's something that we know about these things or not yet, but that's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Justin, are we prepared to answer the question about the ponding basin? Will that remain?
Is the concern that the ponding basin will be redone? You like the way it is, or do you?
Well, it's directly behind my house, and it's kind of that nice buffer zone between anything that's going on in the field. And we actually do get a lot of wildlife that kind of comes from there. So I guess my concern is I don't want any, unless it would be made better, I don't want any.
So your concern is it's going to be removed, or it's going to be redone some way that it's going to be made smaller or something like that?
Justin, is that something we can answer now, or do you want to get back on that? Oh, hold on one moment here. Oh, are you the applicant?
I'm the engineer, civil engineer on the project.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Joe Bailey with Samatech, 12800 Whitewater Drive, Minnetonka, Minnesota.
Okay.
And yeah, to answer your question, the wet pond on the east side would remain completely the same. We will be expanding that west depression to utilize for infiltration, but the wet pond will remain the same.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else in person? Go ahead, sir. Come on up.
Terry, representing Terry's Hardware. Address is 13125 Idell Avenue, Hastings, in Nininger Township. Just want to clarify our concerns. So I've been talking to Mr. Brockman about it since we sent the letter to the city and to Brian as well. Just to clarify more of our concerns, it's more, being able to accommodate the joining of the two properties completely on all edges, and the increased traffic. There is an easement that does exist currently between the properties. It was designed essentially for a commercial retail development, and the traffic and parking and stuff that went along with that. This is substantially different. I can't say that I oppose the project. My concern is being able to control the traffic around our building safely, being able to accommodate our ability to load and unload freight trucks, again, safely, someplace for them to be, and not to completely block traffic. Because right now, essentially, our unloading zone is the southern driveway that would be heading straight west out to Highway 61. And just knowing what I know about the general area and the traffic, a substantial amount of the traffic will migrate to that exit if this development goes forward. You know, is what is being presented in the site plan going to be adequate to handle the traffic and still be able to accommodate our ability to function for handling freight out on the backside of our building? Again, the general layout was originally designed for commercial, shared retail, commercial area, and that's not what we have now. So I've talked to Joe and Brian, and we're in conversation to say, okay, what can we do about this? My concern is it wasn't on the original site plan, and also we weren't made aware of this project to even comment on it prior to a week ago. Didn't even know it was going to happen. So that's a little bit of a concern as to why we never even knew it was coming and had a chance to kind of make some input. Again, it's not my place to oppose this project. I just want to make sure that traffic, parking can function and with us there and safely handle both of those subjects.
So I'm familiar with that area because I live over there, but.
Yeah.
So your trucks, they come on, they go on to 30?
They come off 61, well, they come off of both 33rd and 61.
And
The
where
larger,
do they load and unload? Or
load
where
and
do they
unload on the back of the building, and the majority of it, yeah.
That's the south side?
South side, yep.
And then,
Yep.
so they use that, kind of that nondescript roadway as an exit?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
The
Yeah,
one
how
that
do you
just kinda
describe
exists.
that loop? Yeah, I don't know.
I see. So they kind of do a loop around the building, and that gives them the access.
Gives them the access, right.
So they're not
And
having to do
I think we can
three-point turns.
accommodate the access. That my concern is when the truck is staged there and we're loading and unloading off of that truck. Right now, it's parked essentially in the center or just to the side of that roadway.
Oh, that's right, yeah, it's because it parks on the road, right? Yeah, I've seen them unload on there, so
Right,
that's where they
exactly.
unload.
Yep.
Okay.
So they're parking there while we load and unload. Our loading dock is an overhead door just to the north of the edge of the property on that back corner, so.
And that also is the road that's proposed to be one of the major artery into this complex, and that's what your concern is?
That's
The battle between the two?
Right,
Got it.
exactly.
Okay,
To not block traffic, but also provide a safe place for me and my staff to navigate around a delivery vehicle, loading and unloading product, not get run over.
okay.
So,
I got a good visual of it, thank you.
all right.
Appreciate that. Do you have anybody else wishing to speak? Hold on one second.
Justin, is there a way to pull up that picture that shows the
Oh, yeah, you can pull
area
that
in
up.
question, just so we can have a better idea?
While you're doing that, John, do we have anybody on Zoom with their hands up?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay. There it is. So just maybe you can just kind of outline the road that we're all talking about for those that may not be as familiar with the area that I am. So the semis come in that way. It's Terry's
This would be
Hardware.
the south of the building,
Yep.
and they come around here.
And so they load right there on the south part, right? Oh,
Yeah, the cab of the tractor would essentially be parked right in the middle of that T intersection as it's
Right.
designed, but
yep.
we came up with kind of a little brilliant alternative, just for a place for the truck to sit, and just as a starting point.
Okay.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks. We can go ahead and leave that up. That's a good shot there. Okay, do we have anybody else wishing to speak? Come on up. Hi.
I'm Brian Bachman. I'm with the Enclave Companies
Okay.
out of West Fargo, North Dakota. Yeah, it was totally my fault that Pete and I didn't connect before this, but we were able to talk through on Friday afternoon, and literally in an hour, because Joe's a whole lot smarter than I am, was able to put together a pretty good concept plan where basically we are going to take some of that green space between our site and Terry's and basically come up with a way to get a truck to load there so that we aren't blocking the street, because we have no desire to have that street blocked either, nor to have anybody getting creative on trying to go around a truck, because that'll end well. So I have very little worry that we can get that solved on our site or with a combination of what he's got there or the other. But we can find a way to get him parked on the side of his property where he has room to get back and forth to his door with his loader, and then we can get him in and out of there without having to have anything messy.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else? Go ahead, come on up.
Tim McNeely, 319 Tyler Street. I mean, it's related to what he said about not being like adequately notified and like finding out midstream. When we purchased our house, it was apparently the day after the city put a post in the paper about a meeting. So we didn't find out about the building by us on 3rd until like November that was even happening. So like I second his not being notified like adequately. Like we had zero idea. It was like, a what? So I think we could maybe do a better job of at least notifying adjoining properties and make sure people know, because I'm just seconding the being surprised by something that you didn't expect and then completely changing, way things function for you. So that's it. It was just a acknowledgement of I feel his pain.
No, thank you. Yeah, typically, we see the zoning part first, and that kind of gives you an indication of something that's coming. This is kind of a unique one where we're undertaking the zoning and the plat all at the same time. So I didn't know about it either. This is my first hearing about it, so sometimes that does happen where we don't have that long span of time. But, John, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, when we have an application before this body, we'll provide notice of that. And, is it going to provide the timeliness that people will maybe want? Perhaps so, perhaps not. Pertaining to situations in which one buys into a neighborhood, we're always available to answer questions. We answer lots of questions daily from folks that are looking at property that call us up and say, hey, what's going on? And then we can tell them, and then they can provide a property purchase with their eyes wide open.
Okay, thanks, John.
Chair, if I could also just add something?
Justin, yep, go ahead.
A lot of times when projects like this happen, it starts off with a developer calling up and asking us questions. And, there's really nothing to notify anyone of until we get an application and we have something to notify you about. If you are going to buy a property and you wonder what's going to happen, behind it, we can say, well, we've been getting a lot of calls from developers interested in doing something. But until we actually have an application and have something that's actually being requested, there's really nothing to notify you of. And we don't, typically have these, just these plans sitting on our desk for months at a time before we have a meeting here. When we get them, we start processing pretty quickly and reviewing them and sending out the notices. It just, seems to kind of happen probably quicker than you'd be wanting.
All right, thanks, Justin. Anyone else wish to come up? And one double check on Zoom before I close it.
Zoom, Mr. Chair.
Okay, sounds good. All right, seeing no one else here to speak, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, open it up for questions, comments. And if Go ahead, Commissioner Romans.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Justin, one quick question on this is, I've noticed there's a lot of conditions on this one, going through. And a lot of them are pretty minor modifications to the plan. Some things that come in front of us obviously take a lot of conditions just because of the gray areas or the complexity of it. Wondering why so many of these weren't worked out ahead of time.
Well, I mean, half of them are boilerplate conditions that were on all of our reports. I normally have, a condition in the reports about working with the engineering department on drainage. They had given us a lot more specifics of their items that they're going to be working with them on, and I ended up including them in the report, whereas normally those specifics wouldn't be maybe included in the Planning Commission report, which makes the list a little bit longer. But it's more just additional information rather than a long list of things that weren't completed.
Okay, I just kind of wanted.
Are there some specific ones that are an issue?
Just certain things you addressed in here too, of the including the loading zones and the the sidewalk system, stuff like that, where I would have thought that may have been worked out before through this process. Obviously I agree with those statements. I think they're both very applicable and should be added to this plan if we move forward with it. Just wondering, I normally it's just see a lot. Is it been moving quicker than normal, or just wondering?
No, I mean, well, we do a preliminary review of these with our interdepartment meetings, and then at that time we give them all the comments, and they give us revised plans. But you can imagine while I'm doing a staff report, some other details are going to come up, and of course don't want to let those get forgotten about, so they're put in as conditions.
No, it's more of just a question of curiosity on the process, just for everybody's explanation on it, so I appreciate that. The other thing is just regarding, at what level is like a traffic study required? I don't know if you can add to that.
I'm not sure if we have any kind of a policy on it. Generally, it's if we have any concern that an area might not have been contemplated for commercial development of a certain size. John?
Yeah, I mean, taking a look at the history of this subdivision here, this was originally planned for a large grocery store. That's what was originally supposed to be planned to the site. Rainbow was going to build and plan this site. So you can imagine the roadway network was set up for a large retail center down there. Now, when you take a look at a 100,000 square foot grocery store versus 211 apartment units, I don't have the specifics as from a traffic standpoint, but they both generate a lot of traffic on them.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, just curiosity on at what point that kind of triggers in here, because obviously, it's quite a few vehicles coming in and out, but if it was designed for that, that's appreciative. I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Romans. Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Matzke?
So we're asked tonight to look at doing both a rezoning, a preliminary and a final plat. What's the difference between the preliminary and the final, and can we hold off on the final until we've seen some of the changes and seen some of the details worked out on the road conditions there between Terry's? Can we maybe do some of those things in our, right? That's what I'm reading here for, it says, we're looking to do a preliminary and a final plat, or is it?
Well, if your issues are related to the site plan, it would probably be best to, if you felt that the unknown issues are related to the site plan, then you couldn't
Well,
find approval.
I'm not opposed to approving a preliminary. I guess I'm wondering what the final plat is gonna look like, if there's going to be, is there's gonna be some modifications yet to the roads or something like that, or is that something that won't be affected at all?
It's not going to be affected. The only plans that are going to be affected by anything that changes for incorporating differently to the other sites are going to be related to the site plan. The property boundaries are not going to be changing.
So the plat, so I'm just making myself understand the process a little. The plat is just basically the site is just going to be platted out as apartment buildings. It's not going to, how they're laid out could be still changed.
The plat is just the underlying division and ownership of the property and easements. It's not going to affect any improvements.
Okay.
All the improvements are going to be in the site plan.
Okay, that makes things a little more understandable.
All right. Thank you. I think what he's trying to get at is we just want to make sure that there's a place to unload trucks. That situation is taken care of, and that's not out there lingering and causing consternation or concern for Terry's.
Well, and
Because they've been there for umpteen amount of years, so we want to make sure that that's taken care of, and that's not going to be
I don't
a
want
problem. Is that what you're trying to get to?
Yeah, I don't want to hold up the process. I think it's a
Right.
good plan. I just,
Right.
I don't want to approve something that says this is our final and that's the way it's going in.
Right.
And then have it come back and then Terry's having an issue with this. I want to be able to have something that we can go back and say, no, this isn't quite right. We need to work this out and make sure that everybody is satisfied in this process.
Right, exactly. Because this is a unique one, because residential is sprouting up into commercial. And so you've got to take into account all that stuff. And then as far as the Highway 61, is MnDOT involved in this at all?
Yeah, we provided them a copy of all the plans, and they were hoping to have preliminary comments to us by today. And they sent me an email and said their preliminary comments are that access and drainage permits are going to be necessary, but they'll have other comments. So that wasn't terribly helpful, but
But MnDOT is involved.
Yeah.
And the only reason I ask is left turns onto 61 from 33rd are kind of like roulette, especially during rush hour. And traffic coming into town doesn't slow down at the 45 like they're supposed to, and they certainly don't slow down at 33rd. And now we're adding another significant left turn, right turn, just to the south of 33rd. That nondescript road that I called it isn't used now except for maybe an occasional semi coming out from unloading. That's now going to be a main artery in and out of a development where we're adding potentially 391 total parking spaces, which means that we could potentially have 300 more possible vehicles using two roads that clearly are very, very difficult to navigate left turns on. Right turns aren't easy either, but you can usually make that pretty simple, except in the wintertime. But yeah, so that's my concern, is that the Highway 61 and then the left turns from 33rd into 316 aren't much better than they used to be either, but that's neither here nor there. I can't do anything about that, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we're really adding like 400 more cars in an area that already sees a lot of congestive traffic between 61, 33rd, and then that one road. So as long as MnDOT's involved and they're doing a study on it, I'm okay with that, but that needs to be done.
The way it sounds is it was designed to have a lot of traffic with a commercial.
It was
begin
back in the
with,
day. Yeah.
Back in the day, so
Yeah, so,
I don't see that as.
yeah. But I'm glad MnDOT does need to review it though for 61, just so the applicant knows that that's not an easy area to navigate in and out of if you're taking left turns, either off at 33rd, and now you've added this new artery. So, and then plus you got the semi. You gotta make sure Terry's is taken care of, because the last thing we wanna do is create any accidents at that intersection with residents and semis turning in and out, especially during the spring, when all the spring deliveries are taking place, because I've seen it gets pretty busy. He sometimes has 2-3 trucks lined up unloading fertilizer and plants, and I mean, I live there, over by there, so I see it every day. So we gotta make sure that we have that all under wraps so that your residents aren't putting themselves in any danger, there's not any safety issues back and forth. Okay?
Does Terry's currently own the parcel directly to the west of his property, or is that somebody else's property? Okay.
All right, that's all my comments. Commissioners, do you have any other questions? Commissioner Tyken?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The new stormwater, is that going to be a wet pond or just an infiltration zone? The smart guy will come up and answer that.
So the area to the west of that existing sidewalk connection to the neighborhood to the south, that area will be utilized as infiltration.
Okay.
So right now, it's I believe a dry kind of depression, similar to what it will be today. It'll just need to be expanded slightly for the, increased impervious area.
Okay, thanks. And then I have a question about the trail. To me, it looks like it just dumps into the parking lot.
Yeah, we're still working through the final layout of that. We'd like to kind of have it follow along the pond, so we're working out just kind of the exact details of that location and maneuvering the garages around to make sure we have space for that.
The current layout is a sidewalk that goes up here, and then it goes across a couple of driving aisles, but with a complete sidewalk. We had commented that we'd like it to kind of remain how it is. There's a kind of a walking depression in the grass along the pond. So they showed like an easement area for that, but there's not probably enough room to go between the parking lot and the pond currently, and they were going to be looking at seeing if they could do anything in that area. But it does, maintain a connection currently with the sidewalk, but it's just not as straight a shot as we would like to see.
Yeah, and then with that, kind of our concern with having the garages on that east side where the trail would existing kind of travels is then you're directing people behind a row of garage buildings, which isn't necessarily, the most ideal, safe route that would be, could be.
Yeah, and that was my other question. Those aren't actually parking lots, those are actually buildings,
Yep,
garages?
so those are individual garage stalls.
Okay.
Yep.
That's gonna look way different than I imagined. And the drop-off areas, that's listed in our, is that number 16? Okay. Then my other question was about traffic issues, and it sounds like MnDOT's involved, so we're good there. This is.
I can answer your question on the drop-offs and loading areas. Is we always basically, like all of those parking spaces right by those entrances, we'll have visitor and drop-off parking there. We just do that through signage.
Okay.
Because same thing, the last thing we need is the Amazon truck, because especially talk about Christmas time, we have 55 Amazon trucks coming. So that's always an issue for us. The connectivity, we did talk about putting that on this side, because it was funny, we really didn't think about that up front, but then when you hit Google Earth on this and you zoom a little bit, you literally can see where people are walking, just like the reason this roadway kind of crosses there. There's a roadway in the grass. When you look at Google Earth, people have just been making one. So we basically, we need to have some connectivity because people are making it whether we want to or not. So we wanted to at least be able to control it. But yeah, that was really the only concern there, is it's going to be kind of a darker area. We would rather have them kind of come up and through the lighted area where it's, we like to have walking traffic,
So as they kind of come back to the east there, they'll be marked?
Yeah, there will basically be a sidewalk that'll walk, like you said, it goes up here.
Yep.
You can come down this way. This sidewalk will also come, that's what ties this building to the clubhouse area. There's a multiple sidewalks that actually kind of come through there that we do as kind of a walking area so people can walk dogs on one side and have the other, and have pedestrians on the other side.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
You bet. No, and I mean, I guess I apologize, I didn't introduce myself very well, but we, a little bit about us is that we came to the Twin Cities in 2019. We've got 12 different projects that we're working on throughout the metro. We're a development company, we're a construction company, and we're a management company. And the best part and most important part, we're also the owners, the long-term owners of our projects. We don't build and sell projects. So being good neighbors with Terry's, with the neighborhood, everything else is always very important to us because everything we design, everything we build, and everything we manage, we intend to keep for a long time. So having good long-term neighbors always is very important to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any other comments? Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, kind of on the same sidewalk vein, I also noticed that I don't know if I really see an accessible, I guess, access to 33rd. I know there's a sidewalk along 33rd that connects up to the trail now, along 316. So I was wondering, you know, with that connection to Cary Park area to the south, if there's a way we can get that, you know, permeable through, and also for the residents of the apartment to be able to access 33rd and make it, if you zoom out a little bit, you know, to the wider network. And then also, I took a spin through the Vermilion Corridor study as well, and this kind of has a sort of a model site development that I looked at as part of that, and it did mention something about, you know, trying to have parking in the rear whenever possible. I know there's some along 33rd there, but I'm just wondering, you know, if there's a way. I wasn't aware that there was a berm requirement either, Justin. That was a new thing to me. Okay, I guess to me, I would rather, it's still an apartment building, but I guess it just feels like more of a, it would be more part of a neighborhood or part of the streetscape if that wasn't necessary.
The reason we set the building back and have the parking in the front really wasn't for us. It was really just to maintain, we didn't want to bury the bank, and we didn't want to bury Terry's to where so we really just tried to find where everybody's setback was and tried to give it a more retail setback there. That's not our favorite parking area, but it was really, when we first drew it and it was right up there on the street, it really kind of overpowered everything, and we didn't want to do that.
Yeah, so it was more of a building line thing, okay. But yeah, so I guess that would be my main thing, is that sidewalk or trail permeability of the whole site from the Cary Park area. I guess I just kind of see an opportunity for the wider neighborhood. And then also, yeah, that sidewalk along 33rd, I know it's in kind of tough shape too, having been down there a little bit. Just wondering if, yeah, there'll be a access for the building and the site to access, you know, accessible way to get through there, out onto 33rd and then out, you know, to 316 and beyond, so. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? My only final comment is just make sure you have a plan in place for the lights during our Mayfly hatch. Otherwise, you're gonna have a mess. So, that's all I gotta say. So, hey, commissioners, any other questions? Okay. Did I even close the public hearing? I don't even remember. I'll go ahead and officially close the public hearing if nobody else wishes to speak.
Thank you.
All right. All right. What's that? Oh, hey, Commissioner Braun, go ahead.
Same questions as the other apartment. Bicycle parking, was it a possibility or consideration?
Yeah, we always have designated bike rooms, bike repair stations. We actually talked about maybe doing some outdoor bike repair stations. And this whole kind of dry pond, wet pond area was really kind of unique because it's a lot of green grass that we can't use. So a lot of it was trying to figure out what we could do on that dry side. And that's some of the stuff that we talked about, is maybe some outdoor exercise stuff. Do we have a bike repair station there? Do we do some different things like that? No, bikeability has become a huge thing for us all over the city. We love to talk about where we can build projects where we're walkable. And this is cool because it is one of the things we like about it. It's you're walkable to a grocery store, you're walkable to a lot of different things. Whoops, sorry. But bikeability is ultimately what we measure things for. Because anytime that we can use, have people not having to be quite so car-centric, it works out a lot better for everybody.
Yeah, and I guess my line of questioning on that comes from, and maybe this is a wider comment, just for, you know, maybe a question for John and Justin, is, you know, there's pieces I know in that people movement plan that was adopted a while back, that, and it's not formalized right now, that ask for or talk about basically adding a point in the checklist for this type of question. So,
This project's a little bit different for us because since we have exterior garages, it makes bike parking really easy for most folks. Whereas when we have underground parking and other things, like, we have to be a little more creative. But no, this will have probably some of the better bike parking that we have.
okay, yeah, and then, good to hear, I like that, because, yeah, like I mentioned, now that the 316 project is done, a lot of those connections, they're still not perfect in that area, but they're becoming better.
Yep.
So, it's good. And then, yeah, the electric vehicle question.
Always. It's, you have to remember, we're from North Dakota, so we're a little slow. We don't have nearly as many of those. So when we first started building here, we basically wired for them, right? We're like, okay, we know it's gonna come eventually. And then our management people got into town and they're like, okay, we might need a couple. And then it was, we might need 5. Now it's like, how many can we have? It's just the reality of where we're headed, right? So we try to do all of our technology stuff where if we're not doing it, we're wiring for it, we're planning for it. So, like, all of our buildings are planned to have solar at some point in time. We aren't gonna do it today because as of right now, it's still not financially feasible for it to make it work. Do I think it's gonna be that way 10 years from now? No, I think we'll probably solve some of it. I think in 10 years, we're gonna have a whole lot of electric parking vehicles. I think it's gonna be the opposite. So we have to try to plan ahead for it. But my goal is always, I try to never get too far ahead on technology. I figured the turning point's gonna be when all of our cell phones plug in with the same charger. That's the time we go all in on car chargers.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? All right, and if you do choose to make a motion, remember you can combine all 3, or we can take them individually. You decide when you make the motion. And then your motion would be also subject to the 17 conditions on the back, unless you need to address any of those individually. With that, Commissioner Romans.
I just have a quick point of clarification. If, as I comment about having 17 of these, if we should add an 18th on for Terry's, making sure that's taken care of. If that's something we need a condition on or not.
You can always make the motion.
I can.
You sure can.
All right, then I will make the motion.
Okay.
I'll make the motion, if I can find my paperwork, to approve the rezoning of the preliminary plat, the final plat, and the site plan of the County Crossroads 4th Edition with the 17 included conditions and one condition that the parking for the semis is taken care of. I don't know how well that works as a condition, but of that nature.
Commissioner Romans? I'm sorry, Commissioner Tyken.
Can I suggest that we make it that the parking is off over the public right of way?
That parking is taken care of for semis that are not in the public right of way. I would agree with that.
Is that a possibility even?
So all the drives on the site will be private. They won't be public right of way, but we can make space for it outside of the, I guess,
Out of active traffic?
drive access
Okay.
to the site off of 33rd.
We just want to make sure that he's got the access he needs to unload the truck safely.
Yep.
And they're not interfering with residential traffic. Because it does get pretty busy there, spring and in fall, so.
Understandable.
Yep. Okay, so Commissioner Romans, we have a motion on the floor to approve all 3 and then add an 18th condition. The condition is that the applicant will work with Terry's Hardware to ensure that there's sufficient area for commercial traffic to unload off the public right-of-way on a private area, in a private area. Am I correct?
You got it.
All right, so that's the motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Commissioner Matzke?
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Matzke on a second. Do we have any further discussion? Any new discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And when does that go to city council?
We'll follow the same track as the last one. We'll go to city council on the 22nd to order a public hearing for the rezoning, and that public hearing and the remaining land use actions would go to council on March 7th.
Okay, so there will be another public hearing,
Correct.
another public hearing coming, and then city council, so, okay. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, we have another public hearing, number 5 here. This one is for Rise Up Recovery, Special Use Permit 2022-14, operation of a state licensed residential facility, 305 Fifth Street East. And what the report is, John.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners. Before us is an application for a special use permit for a state licensed residential facility containing board and lodging with special services. It's being proposed as a substance use disorder recovery by the applicant's Rise Up Recovery. The address for this site would be on the northeast corner of Ramsey and 5th Street at 303 East 3rd. The property right now is currently owned by Dennis Sullivan and Martha Sullivan. Rise Up Recovery would be purchasing the existing building and then operating their services out of the building as it sits right now. So we're looking at here background information in the comprehensive plan. This is guided for medium residential. This use is consistent with a medium residential use. Zoning is R2, which is consistent with the surrounding area, albeit the area directly to the west where Guardian Angels Townhomes is zoned R4, a little bit denser there. Existing condition of the property, we've got about a 14,000 square foot lot and a 3,300 square foot home. The home has 6 bedrooms. In the past, it was used as a triplex. For the last 10 or so years, I believe it's been used as a single-family home. So their proposal is to use the home and operate their facility outside of it. When you take a look at the neighborhood, it's mostly single-family, some apartments, some two-family homes that surround it, then Guardian Angels Townhomes directly to the west here. We did provide notification here to all properties within 350 feet of the property. Did get back a number of comments. Those comments have been given directly to the Planning Commission. To summarize very generally, we received 7 comments and letters that were supportive of the application for various reasons, and then we received two comments that were not supportive of the application as it sits. So the details of that are within your packet. What they're proposing to do as Rise Up Recovery is to provide board and lodging facility for special services for substance use disorder recovery. What they would like to do is to operate up to 15 beds for adult men. The facility would be staffed 24/7. They state they're a Christian organization, will ensure historical integrity is upheld, and keep the home held to a high community standard. That is from the application they turned in. So from our standpoint, our regulatory aspects of this are a little bit unusual. This is not something that's identified directly within our zoning code, but within our enabling legislation from state statutes, there is a provision that allows for this. There is something in state statutes that says that permitted multiple family uses shall allow a state licensed residential facility serving between 7 to 16 people to be permitted, and a council may opt to have a special use permit as part of that. And the special use permit would be to assure proper maintenance and operation of the facility. So to summarize that, state statutes provides that this type of facility can be considered within a single or a multiple family zoning district, and that conditions may be placed on there to assure the proper maintenance and operation of the facility. When we take a look at special use permits, we take a look at them to set conditions so that we can ensure the operation of the facility is harmonious with the neighborhood and is something that would be consistent with the residential nature of a neighborhood. So with this permit, they would be required to obtain a boarding and lodging license with special services from the state of Minnesota. There's certain regulations and obligations that they would have to maintain that licensure. When you take a look at the home, again, this is a 6-bedroom home. They're proposing to use it for 15 individuals. What we're recommending from a staff is that it be limited to 10 individuals to be served, looking at the standpoint of having 5 bedrooms for services of clients. That would be 2 people per bedroom. That equals 10. The other bedroom would be for the on-site staff there. They did mention that this would be something that would be staffed 24/7. Looking at the yards and ground of the facility, this gives a better idea of what the house looks like right now from the front. This view here is from the back. There's bushes, shrubbery that surrounds the property, 6-foot fence towards the back of it, picket fence that surrounds the property here. Within the rear of the property, they have a small deck. This is facing to the north and in the backyard area here. I don't show really well here there is a detached garage located here. It's a 3-stall garage. There's room in front of it for another 3 spaces, so really you have parking there for 6 vehicles. When we take a look at our parking requirements, we don't have anything specifically for this type of facility. Our rationale is that they should have 1 space per room, which would be 6 spaces, which is what they have and what they're providing here. They would also be required to obtain a rental license from us. Rental licenses are for facilities that are rented out. That's pretty obvious. What does it do? They have requirements under there for certain building code obligations, fire code, electrical, mechanical, maintenance of the facility to ensure that the property can take the number of individuals that would be proposed. And I think that's most of what I have here. Is we are recommending approval of the special use permit with a few conditions. 1, maintaining the state license by the board and lodging, for board and lodging by the state of Minnesota for special services. Maintaining a rental licenses from the city of Hastings. Facility must employ on-site treatment staff 7 days a week, 24/7. No more than 10 individuals enrolled in qualified treatment programs shall occupy the dwelling, and the usual sunset clause provision on that. So at this point, this is a public hearing. I will note that Tiffany Newhart from Rise Up Recovery is in the audience if you have any questions for her, or I can stand for any questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Again, if you wish to speak, come on up. Anyone here? Raise your hand if you want to come up and speak for, okay, come on up. And then just name and address if you would. Thank you.
My name is Diane Steele. I live at 422 Fifth Street on the corner of Bailey and Fifth. I never received any notification of that. Can they, if they want, I know firsthand about drug and alcohol recovery. There's no place in a residential area for them. Can't they build on to Cochrane up there by the vets? I vote no. My house will be going on the market. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The notification was 350 feet, correct? Okay.
I'm further than 300.
You are? Okay. All right.
It's on my street. They got one.
Okay.
They live on Tyler.
Okay. All right. Next, anyone else? Anyone? No? Okay. Anyone on Zoom?
Yeah, we do have 1 person with a raised hand on Zoom. I could bring that individual into the meeting.
Okay, and then if we could have their name and address.
Sure. So I've got Emily Meningen coming into the meeting. So Emily, when you're in, if you can state your name, your address, and then continue with your comments. All right, Emily, you're set to go. You might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. My name is Emily Mellingen. Good try. My address is 309 5th Street East, so direct neighbor to this property. So I have a lot of questions, but I think I want to open up with this on the record. I'm a registered nurse, and I've spent 10 years serving the underserved population of people in the state of Minnesota. So I have a unique knowledge of these programs. I've worked at Cochrane Recovery here in Hastings. I've also worked for Meridian Residential Treatment Homes in St. Paul, White Bear Lake, Lake Elmo, and Beauterre and Owatonna. And for the last 9.5 years, I have worked at the Department of Corrections for the state of Minnesota. My current title is RN Supervisor. So I just wanted to open up with that. You know, I truly believe that everyone deserves safe housing and to be treated with dignity and respect. But I do have a lot of questions about the operations of Rise Up Recovery. That's going to be directly my neighbor. So if I could ask those questions, I would be appreciative of that.
Okay, sure, go ahead. We'll go ahead and record them here.
Okay, perfect. So, let's see. So, I understand this is going to be a treatment type housing. Is this going to be more emergency type housing or long term for the duration of treatment? I want to know what the admission requirements are. Do they accept violent felons, sex offenders, people with restraining orders against them, prison parolees? Do they do background checks, or do they rely on self-reporting of people that want to live there? As far as hours of operation, I realize they're going to be 24/7, but I want to kind of know like what their quiet times are, that kind of thing. Are they going to have extra lighting outside? I know in my work in residential treatment facilities, a lot of them have trouble sleeping or outside smoking at all hours of the night, talking with their roommates. How many cars are going to be there during the day, and then also during visiting? So we're going to see a lot more cars parked in the area. Right now, if you look down 5th Street East, there's not a single car parked in the street at any given time. We all park off the street. So you guys had mentioned you like 10, which I think is more, as far as people living there, more appropriate. How many staff will be there? And this 24/7 staff, will they be awake? And also, I know that you said treatment staff are going to be there, but what credentials are they going to have? You know, what will the potential strains be to the existing infrastructure of the home with having that many people living there? The thing that pops into my mind is sewage, but I'm not an expert in infrastructure, so I'll leave that to you guys. You know, are they providing a detox? What are their general house rules? What is their policy for eloped residents? And also my last question is for the council. You know, what is the city's recourse if this goes badly? If there's too many calls for service to the police or EMS, home disrepair, what does remediation look like for that? And also, and it's unfortunate, but you know, it's shown that home values don't really decrease with having something like this in the proximity to your home, but it also significantly lengthens the time to sell their home because they're going to look for a unique, there's going to be a unique buyer that's okay with that. Like I would be okay with that if it's a well-run facility. My concern, after all those questions are answered, my concern is still that Rise Up Recovery received their 501c3 in July of 2021. They're a very new company. The president, Tiffany, received her LADC, licensed alcohol and drug counselor, certification in 2019, in April 2019. So just shy of 3 years. I feel like that is a very short time to be running your own treatment facility. I feel like that is too soon. Too much. And yeah, I think that after all those questions are answered, I can weigh in on whether or not I would oppose or approve of something like this being my neighbor.
Okay, thanks, Emily. I think I got most of those down here, and we're recording it for follow-up, and Tiffany's here today too, so give her an opportunity to run through those as well. Thank you. Do we have anybody else on
And,
Zoom?
I'm not sure if anyone else online that would wish to make any comment, if you could use the raised hand symbol, we can call you into the meeting. And at this time, Mr. Chair, I do not see anyone wishing to speak online.
Okay, is there anyone here that wishes to speak or speak again? Follow up? No? Okay, Tiffany, are you Tiffany? Oh, okay, hi. You can come on up if you want.
My name is Tiffany Newharth. I live at 3605 Red Wing Boulevard in Hastings, Minnesota. I'm glad that you wrote all those questions down because I might need some prompting. But first, I want to address the issue of my license and that time frame of, I actually was licensed for a period of 8 years prior to that, from 2004 until 2012. I was a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. I worked in various settings, including residential treatment, outpatient treatment, three-quarter-way housing, and halfway housing. My license lapsed for a period of time, and that new 3-year period that you see my license is the period that I've had it since that lapse happened. So I have pretty extensive history, not only working in treatments, but going through multiple treatments myself. I'm a person with lived experience in recovery, long-term recovery. What makes us unique at Rise Up Recovery and this home that we desire to open is that it addresses the gaps in the current recovery system that we have, including, Emily, as you said, you worked at Cochrane House. This home would serve as both sort of short-term emergency recovery housing and long-term recovery housing with sort of a mentorship model also, so the people who have longer periods of recovery and are living in this home, able to mentor some of the people that are coming in. The staffing and the requirements that we'll have for staffing is every single staff person will be a certified peer recovery specialist. They go through a certification process, a training, take a test, and that's a certification that is updated either annually or every 2 years. There's continuing education that's required for them to maintain that certification. And it's also overseen by myself, who is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. What was some of the other questions?
Well, she had emergency versus long-term, you answered that. The admission requirements, criminal background checks, and what kind of backgrounds will you or won't you allow?
Yes, great question. So all of our staff have to pass background checks according to Minnesota Department of Human Services. People coming in, we do run criminal records as part of our intake process. We will not take people who are registered sex offenders will not be able to be admitted. Obviously, our focus is people with substance use disorders. The nature of the crime, some people have, maybe like a burglary charge as they were stealing, in their past life. We want to give people like that a chance, but we're measuring kind of their stability coming in. These aren't people who need detox services. They need to be medically stabilized because we don't have medical services on staff. So we can work with a program called Kai-Shin to work with ambulatory detox services, but that's something that's overseen off-site. The services we provide, it's not treatment in the common sense that you would think, Emily. This is more peer recovery support services, and then substance use disorder, maybe outpatient treatment services, either virtually or off-site. Does that make sense?
Okay. So when you pull criminal histories, are you pulling charges and convictions, or just convictions or charges, or both?
It both.
And then she had a question about quiet times, outside lighting, allowing people to smoke outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there'll be a designated smoking area. There will be a quiet time, nobody leaving the house after, we can figure what that is, 10 p.m. on weekdays, maybe midnight on weekends. The nice thing, something that's appealing about this property is the privacy to it. You'll see that it's really surrounded by high shrubs and the fence. And that's both for privacy for the neighbors, but also the confidentiality of the residents that will live there. So, I have to be honest with you guys. been in the recovery field for a number of years. I have been through programs that are really crappy at best, and that is not what we aim to be. We have extraordinarily high standards and expectations for ourselves, for our staff, and one of the things that we are very prideful about is really working to break the stigma that goes along with substance use disorders and to challenge. People often think, oh, they're just a drug addict, right? No, we want to completely change that perspective of people, that I'm somebody who is in recovery and who was deemed hopeless, and you would never know it now looking at me, right? That's the hope we want to give. That's the expectation we have for people who come through our programs.
And then she had a question on the types of service, and I was a little confused too, because we did get another document where there were some questions that were answered.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to clarify as well, because she brought it up, and it's exactly one of my questions. You are not actually providing treatment.
It's that we're providing a
On-site.
substance use disorder treatment service. So peer recovery support is within, there's multiple different treatment services that can be provided, anywhere from detox to inpatient treatment to outpatient treatment. Peer recovery support is a service that is provided along that substance use disorder continuum.
Okay, and then she also had a question about, which I also had a question about, I mean, a lot of her duplicate questions here. Residents who elope, who decide they don't want to be there and just want to leave.
Oh, we will give them a ride wherever they want to. I mean, especially with the short-term nature of this, if you think of people staying maybe up to 10 days, the point is to get them plugged in with the best fit that they're going to stay there and have success. So, you know, it's not going to be, we're not a court order program. You know, people are going to be, it's an at-will program, so people who want to come there have the desire to be there. The door is open, but the unique thing about peer recovery is we will take you, we will drive you. So people aren't going to walk out the doors and be wandering around our neighborhood. You know, we'll take you to and help coordinate you getting into a facility that's a better fit if our program is not a good fit for someone.
And then I think one of her other questions on police service calls, which was on my list too, as far as scenario-based question, very generic, but it happens. You have two residents, they have a disagreement. They refuse to disengage, nothing's gonna work, one of them's gonna have to leave. It's 2:30 in the morning, you have one staff member, one person needs to leave. What do? Where's that person gonna go? Who's responsible from getting him to point A to point B? If you only have one staff member, you can't necessarily give them a ride because now you've left the house unattended. So how do you handle that when it goes beyond de-escalation and you have to have the police involved? If that happens, how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I can propose something, I don't know if I'm in the position to do that. Your recommendation, John, was 10 people plus one live-in person. We would propose that there's room for us to have 2 live-in employees, right? So, and they would be different than the daytime employees, by the way. So one of the questions she asked is it an awake position or a sleep position? Excuse me. It would be an overnight sleep position, preferably 2 live-in house managers so that the house is never left. If somebody is dealing with a crisis situation, needing to take somebody somewhere else, there's still someone that has the house staffed. That's ideally what we would prefer.
Okay, I think those were her main questions. I think I got most of them on there. And a lot of them were overlaps from mine, so I just thought I'd have you answer them at the same time rather than going back and forth. But having your proposed 2 people on site is different than the original proposal. So that is something that crossed my mind and I was going to address anyway a little bit later on, but we'll go ahead and leave it at that. Is there anyone else that wants to talk in the public hearing that's here? No? And anyone else on Zoom?
Sure, Emily has raised her hand again.
Okay, go ahead. Do you mind if she asks? No? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a question. This is short-term up to 10 days, correct?
Yes, so a number of the beds would be reserved for that. We're modeling this after a program. There's 2 different programs in the southern state. One is Doc's Recovery House located in Rochester, and then another one is We Recover down in Mankato. And they have a couple of beds, a few beds reserved for that short-term emergency, or if you think of pre-treatment housing, so maybe somebody, I'll just share, I was talking with some people from Dakota County, and they said, you know, our experience, Tiffany, is that so many people get released from jail, and these are non-violent offenders. They're in there for a drug charge. They get released, and they have no ride, and they have nowhere to live. So they end up walking around the streets of Hastings. They end up using again, then reoffending, right? We would be able to be that place where they can come, they can stay with us, get an assessment, and then get transferred to a facility that's going to meet their needs. So there's not that gap of service, and we don't have this issue of homelessness and reoffense, you know. So that would be a small number of beds reserved for that. And then the other beds would be for the longer term recovery housing. And that would be people who've had at least 30 days sober, they've been through treatment, they're stabilized in their recovery, and they want to, you know, launch and get employment services and take advantage of the peer recovery support that we offer.
Follow-up question, I think, from Emily here.
Yeah, so with the 10 days, I totally understand the way this whole business works. How are you ensuring that these people coming for a short-term stay at the drop of a hat aren't going to be experiencing withdrawal or detox symptoms? Are they going to be evaluated by a nurse initially? Or I know LADCs have 3 days to do a comprehensive review. I'm just wondering, with you building your business, how maintainable that's going to be for you when you're taking these short-term 10-day stays that are in transition to finding treatment. It really has me concerned about the way the site's going to be managed, to be honest.
Right. So there is a screening process, right? There's a screening and intake process that takes place, as you know. And then an assessment piece takes place after that. I will not be the person that's primarily doing assessments. I have partnerships with other organizations in the community, Care Crossings, for example, Reflections, for example, these different well-established treatment programs that will be able to do assessments for all of our people within a day or two of them being on site. So if people don't, you know, pass the initial screening, if it's deemed that they've been drinking, you know, on a daily basis for an extended period of time, they're going to be referred to detox, and then we can take them after they have medically stabilized. So there'll be a screening process first and foremost, and then assessors, a number of them, not just myself, doing assessments, and then going from there. So, and again, not all 10 beds are going to be reserved for short-term emergency sober housing, right? I mean, if you talk to Docs Recovery Housing or We Recovery, there's maybe 2 or 3 in theirs that are kind of within that 10 days kind of turning over. So it's based on need, but we don't anticipate more than 3 to 5 beds being for that short-term emergency.
Can you define medically stabilized for me?
Mm-hmm.
So that I understand your business model. I'm just trying to understand the business model for the special use permit part. Can you define medically stabilized?
Yeah, so somebody that is not at risk for intoxication or withdrawal, somebody who does not need medically monitored withdrawal services. So that's going to be primarily for alcohol, opiates, benzodiazepines, those kind of substances that require medical observation for them to withdraw safely.
See, that's what confuses me, because we talk about emergency,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like they did it now versus long-term residents, and so I'm trying to, like Emily asked, I'm trying to figure out, well, what would the emergency ones be then? I mean, because emergency tells me that they haven't been through that yet, that they really have an urgent need, and
Yeah.
they haven't been through that whole process, and maybe they aren't medically stabilized. If they're medically stabilized, then they're not necessarily an emergency case. I'm trying to figure out kind of what the business model is there.
They absolutely can still be an emergency base. So maybe they go and they go through a detox facility, but sometimes there's a, you know, I'll give you an example. If somebody goes into, I've brought in people to Ramsey County Detox, and they're there for 24 hours,
Yep.
maybe 48 hours, generally at most, and then they have nowhere to go after that.
That's correct.
So they're oftentimes not placed from the detox facility into a treatment facility. they could come from detox, right? And they've got their medications that they need to withdraw safely and they're medically monitored, but then they can come and we can plug them in to match them with the right treatment facility from that point in time. Because what we see is people then go back out and they're drinking again. Or another example is somebody gets kicked out of their sober house, let's say even here in Hastings, and they have nowhere to go. Maybe they relapse, they use methamphetamine once or twice, they don't want to give up, they want to keep fighting, they want to get back up and work towards their recovery. They can come here to stabilize and to get connected with the resources and the support services that they need, rather than going and sleeping on John's couch and slipping back into it and not being able to get out, you know?
Okay. Does Emily have any further?
Yes, she does
Emily,
have
go
a
ahead.
follow-up here.
Okay, so you said medically managed at the facility. I don't think you ever answered my question as if you're going to have any healthcare personnel at the facility. To me, it very much feels like there should be. It feels like even if you're taking people that went to detox, as somebody who has worked in the industry, I know even if you're on a 72-hour hold, sometimes you're only there for 48 hours and you're well within the window of still having side effects, significant ones, medical emergencies, from alcohol withdrawal, from opiate withdrawal. You know, this peer-led model that you have, peer-led staff support, has me really concerned. I feel like, in my opinion, this is not a model I've seen professionally. And while it may be out there, I also know that treatment and treatment facilities are a multi-billion-dollar industry. And to me, it feels like almost a disservice to the people that you would serve to not have them appropriately monitored or have a good business model. That is really my concern. As a neighbor, as a nurse, as somebody who knows, that absolutely respects what those people are going through, it has me really concerned, I'll be honest.
Okay. Thanks. Do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, I do. I feel like there's a misunderstanding of the type of people that we would be admitting into our short-term emergency or pre-treatment housing. So we are not providing medical services on site. And I very much take the ethics seriously and my responsibility as a licensed alcohol and drug counselor to make sure that people are safe. And so if somebody is needing a level of care beyond what we can provide, that they will not be admitted. They will be referred to another program. So the types of people that will be admitted into our program are not those that need intensive medical monitoring. They will be referred elsewhere. So
Who is that medical decision?
Pardon?
Who is making the medical decision that they're safe or not safe, I guess is my question. Who is making that clinical decision medically?
So the counselors that are screening them and upon intake, which they're qualified under their LADC to screen for withdrawal and intoxication potential.
Is she, okay. I can't, I don't have the benefit of seeing if she's talking or not. I think where we're trying to make the connection is the process that somebody goes through from start to finish. So you'd use the example of somebody gets out of, where the jail's here in Hastings. Somebody goes to jail for something that's related to drugs or substance abuse, they get released, they walk away from the jail, they go over to Walmart. How did they find you? Can they just walk over to your house and say, I'd like to be admitted? Or do they have to have a referral? Or what if, are the police bringing them there? Or are you going to pick them up? But if there's only one person on staff, who's going to pick them up? And I'm trying to make the connection on how somebody goes from that point to your residence, what services they receive, and then from that point on, because when I read the supplemental questions, it had mentioned that you work closely with a facility up at Stillwater, which is where you'd refer them to. And again, it goes back to that whole one on staff, where there's a lot of stuff that staff member's doing. They're doing intake, they're doing assessments, they're doing the maintaining, they're doing the referral outs, they're supposed to be given rides. You know, and I kind of get brought up that 2:30 in the morning scenario. I mean, something goes awry, well, the police officer can't just stand there and wait for that person to find somewhere to go. So where we go there? I'm trying to figure out the business model because it doesn't seem like you have enough staff for that particular type of business model in this particular neighborhood, in this particular house, in this setting. I'm just trying to figure out the different, you have treatment versus peer counseling, but then you have emergency versus non-emergency and medical stabilized, but then they just came from jail and they may be within their 72-hour hold window, but it could be only 40. You know where we're going with that? We're trying to figure out what the model is. We're not, I'm totally for having residential. I mean, people need it. It's obvious. I mean, we got a lot of testimonials here, which are very powerful and personal. But in order for the special use permit to be granted, we need to have a clear vision of what the model is, and I think I have more questions than I do answers at this point, even after the explanations. So I think that's where we're going with that. Do you want to go ahead and, Commissioner Mattson?
I guess are they free to come and go as they please? Are they just walk in, walk out? They're able to, hey, I'm gonna go grab a Coke downtown and then come back and do what I need to do. It's hard for me. I've had a group home live next door to me, and they had counselors on staff. And all it takes is one bad individual to ruin the entire neighborhood, where the person got away and they started breaking into homes, taking things, causing incidences around there. Well, that gets out, no, property values drop. So I'm trying to figure out, in my mind, how this is being monitored by staff so that this isn't going to be an issue where all of a sudden we've got, a house in the neighborhood where, hey, you don't want to live in that area, that neighborhood, because the people that are come and go they're for the most part, you might have 9 residents that are good, but you have that one that you just can't control. How do you control that one guy? How do we deal with that one guy so that this house doesn't get that reputation?
Sure.
And that's where I'm at with this, trying to decide whether I want to see this. And I think that's what I'm hearing from the resident that lives next door. She doesn't want to see her neighborhood turn into you don't want to live there. And now all of a sudden her property values are in a bad way.
Yeah.
So I'm all for the treatment. I'm all for people need this kind of treatment, but I'm also need to consider the rest of the neighborhood also, and at the same time.
Yeah.
So what kind of assurances are we seeing from this group that this isn't going to be what's going to happen? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be unrealistic for me to say that we're never going to get somebody that may have more struggles than we initially anticipated. But I will say that we would be very diligent when that happens to act immediately and to place them in a more appropriate setting. A setting that is going to meet the needs of somebody that has higher needs. I mean, I'm recognizing that we're not like a Cochrane, or we're not like a Hazelden, a locked facility, right? We're not, and we don't intend to be. So understand that when we do our admission process, we're looking for certain criteria to make sure that it's going to be a good fit for our program, that the staffing and what we can provide, we want to set these people up for success, and our neighbors also. So if there was somebody, hypothetically speaking, that behaviorally was really acting out and struggling or having significant impulse control issues, we would look at an alternative placement and we would bring them there, right? So, and to answer your staffing questions, I'm 100% on board with having more than one staff, at any given time.
Because if you only had one staff member working, right, and you had an issue where you had to refer them out to a different facility, what would you do?
Right.
No, I'm just asking you, what would you do? I mean, what would the staff person, or what would you do with that person who can no longer stay there, who is not meeting the needs of the program, who's not meeting the expectations, they're not abiding by the rules, I don't care if it's 2:30 in the morning, it could be 2:30 in the afternoon
Sure.
on a Sunday. But what would you do if you had to replace that person? What do you do? I'm just asking what the process is to get them replaced somewhere else.
Yeah, so we would get releases of information signed and start making phone calls and finding another facility that has an opening, and then we would transport them there.
But who's doing the transporting though?
So, do you want to come help?
Yeah, you sure can. I'm just trying to understand the model because,
Well, I
you
mean-
know,
So we have an office 2 blocks away and several employees as well, outside of the facility.
okay.
Peer recovery specialist. So you think about it, the peer recovery model too, is there's gonna be multiple people that are in the home throughout the day, but there's also gonna be multiple people that need to go job hunting, that need to go to different appointments. And so we're gonna have different workers, somebody in the home, but other people bringing these other individuals to meet their needs. The goal is to break down the barriers that people experience early on in recovery. Some of that is transportation, some of that is getting health insurance, some of that is some basic needs stuff that our goal is to help these people, get those needs met. So it's not like one person's on site and everything's happening there on site. It's like, okay, you need to go work on getting your driver's license back. This one peer recovery specialist is going to work with you for the day. They're going to take you to your appointment. They're going to take you to the DMV. They're going to help you, whatever you need help with that day. Does that make sense?
Who's doing that?
Certified peer recovery specialists,
So in addition to the staff person?
the on-site peer recovery.
There will be like one on site, but there'll be multiple staff through the day that's always
Correct.
there working with people.
Correct.
There'll also, during the nighttime, will there just be one staff on site? There'll be two, you're changing it to 2.
Yes.
So there'll be 2 staff on site at night. And then again, the next question is they're free to go as they please. The doors are not locked down at a certain time you're in. If you want to go at 10 o'clock at night, go someplace, you can.
No, there'll be a curfew. You're in the house. The expectancy is that you're in the house by 11 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock on weekdays, midnight on weekends. The people who are in there for longer term, they can maybe do an overnight pass on a weekend, go to a family member's house, but that needs to be approved. The people that are there on the short-term basis will not be able to just come and go as they please. They'll be required, if they're leaving the property, to leave with a peer recovery specialist or an approved family member or buddy.
Commissioner Albert?
I have a question. The requirements on the DHS licensing, is there a staffing ratio number that has to be met? And is there also a requirement to have someone that's medically trained, an RN, LPN, of that level to be a part of the staff or contracted out to Emily's point, help with those personnel that are coming in, those people that are coming in that need more medical treatment? And then my other question is, I think there's some confusion around emergency with placement. Emergency doesn't mean that they need medical attention.
Correct.
Emergency means literally they're out of jail, they have nowhere to go. So they're in an emergency, in a crisis that they need someplace to go to. They're sober, when they get out of jail, they just need somewhere to go. So am I correct when I say that about the emergency?
Yes, thank you. It's more housing emergency, right? More a residential emergency, not medical or substance use related withdrawal emergency. That's absolutely accurate, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. But do you know the requirements for staffing ratios? Are there any requirements for staffing? No? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Commissioner Romans?
First off, I just have a few questions kind of related to these, but a little bit different as well. First off, I want to say, thanks for coming out for this. I mean, seems obviously very needed in the community. But I have a couple questions on some of the gray areas as far as, especially long-term, because they're not considered tenants. So I guess to even start on this, how is it funded? Who's paying for them to stay there?
So either one of two things. So we'll pursue housing support funding through Dakota County. And there's a process to go through that. I have a couple of women's recovery homes that we run, and one of them is, we have a contract with Dakota County for housing support funding. So that covers their room and board. They have certain financial requirements that they need to meet in order to qualify for that. The other option is individuals, as they work towards self-sufficiency, there'll be a self-pay option and rate that they can.
Okay,
can
I guess
fall
then,
into.
to me, then, this is where it seems like there's a bit of a gray area as far as tenancy versus patient versus client. So as you stated in your thing, they're not, even long-term people there would not be given the rights of a tenant.
Correct.
So I guess some of the consideration of people coming and going in this way is also their rights and protections as far as being removed and where they're removed to. Do you have signed agreements with different organizations where you can move somebody if, say, they do become a problem that, okay, 2:30 at night, we need to move them, and that, we have those agreements in place that assures the community that there is a place for them to go, that, there is not any, and I know you're well-intentioned on this, but that there isn't any chance of more homelessness created from it, especially if, say, you were referred people from Hennepin County. You're pulling people from different areas, and then either they get removed and then end up on the streets in Hastings, which then creates other burdens upon the city and the community. So I just want to make sure that there's protections in place, signed agreements, assurances, kind of contingencies, essentially, that those folks will have places to be for their protection, for the community, for everybody, going through. And even just on the idea of it, unfortunately, we have to take in the risk of it folding, of in case it doesn't work out, the funding doesn't happen right, and you have 10 people there that need homes tomorrow. Do you have the ability to move 10 people the next day to find them homes? I guess that's where I'm struggling a little bit with this, because obviously big advocate for tenancy rights and wanting people to have that self-sufficiency, and I think part of the process obviously seems that they do need that. So I guess if you can speak to that.
Yeah, so when we talk about longer-term recovery housing, I'm talking maybe upwards of 1 to 2 years. So the goal is for them to move towards what you're describing, that independent living. We also don't want them to be too comfortable. We want them to move towards more self-sufficiency. And so I have relationships. There's not really, the way the recovery community is, there's not really a way that you can have a signed agreement, like I'm guaranteed a bed in your place. That's not really doable. But I have relationships with multiple organizations, multiple different recovery homes, that we can make a phone call and find somebody a bed within minutes. I've never had a problem with that to date.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense on there, but I guess in the words of, business models and special use permits, we like written, guaranteed type of things, not dependent on, unfortunately, you as being the person to be contact, because it might not be you next year, it might be somebody else, who knows? We have to take in all those considerations of having those guarantees and having those, plans made and approved, and looking at it that way and making sure, these people do have homes no matter what happens with it. And, up to 2 years, I guess, to me, that it is weird that you can live there for up to 2 years, pay money, and not be afforded tenant rights.
Yeah, so if I could speak to that. So that's an existing business model, right? Business model in sober housing. So very common. There's several right in Hastings, 4 to 6 residents are funded with the same housing support type money, funding from the county. And they have this same agreements, right? So they have the same rights or lack of rights as far as a renter would have. They can be kicked out just like that. They frequently are kicked out just like that. And that would be for reasons, disagreements, personality situations, like Tiffany mentioned before, maybe there was a relapse, right? There's a zero tolerance policy and you're out. Those people today in this town are being put out on the street, just like that, right? So that's, some of those people have a place to go, right? Some of those people have a nice condo up in town or a nice mom and dad's couch that they can go crash on in an emergency for that 5 or 6 days till they find another sober house. A lot of those people don't have that, and maybe home is the worst place they can go. And those are the people that we're trying to get off. Those are the people that are going to be in your garage stealing your tools tomorrow night, right? So those are the people we're trying to get off this. We're trying to solve that problem, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I mean, everything you're saying here seems that way, definitely. I'm looking at it more as just in the logistical paperwork standard, that everything is tied up, so there isn't questions for you, for the community, for anybody moving forward. Again, I'm supportive of the process here, and you know, I have seen some things around a little bit that legislature looking at consumer protection on sober houses and stuff like that. So just making sure all the ducks are in a row for those types of things, that you are prepared for that and moving forward. So
Yeah, and I could tell you that we would never just kick somebody out on the street and say, good luck. Find a place that goes completely against every single moral and value that we stand for. We will work tirelessly to make sure somebody is placed in a safe environment that's going to better fit their needs, because that's a big part of why we exist anyways, because we were seeing that exact thing happening, and there needs to be a solution to it.
yeah, I guess I would ask maybe if there's something that could be put into writing as far as the actual processes that would go through, that if we need to remove somebody, or if there was an incident, or I think some of these processes as part of the use permit, that, no, we didn't kick these people out on the street, we didn't do that, could provide some assurances to the community as well. So if
Absolutely.
you would be willing to look into that, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, like a discharge. I should have sent it to you. I had to come up with, I have that, close to that already in place when I had applied for one of our women's houses for the housing support funding. I had to outline what is our discharge policy, what is our procedures with that, what do we do if somebody has a recurrence of symptoms in the home, how do we handle that, you know, what is our kind of, is it a zero tolerance, no strike, you're out kind of thing. So I do have something like that. For the most part, I could tweak it a little bit already set up. Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification here. I just want to be able to, we have active a public hearing right now, so I'm trying to get through the public hearing right now, and then we can. She does have her hand up, so if we can bring her into the meeting. Emily, go ahead.
So it sounds like, by comments, that you're not zero use policy. So if they were to use, you're really appealing to the demographic that use but need a safe place to go before they get into treatment. I find that there is a need for that service. I just don't think that need should be located in a residential home. To me, someone that's relapsed and had just used and that walks in your door and says, I need a safe place to go until I can get to somewhere, is not for a residential home, that's not staffed with medical staff, that are properly there to monitor and assess what's going on with that person. My last question to you, I guess, is do you anticipate working with the Department of Corrections, with parolees, to place them in housing for treatment upon their release?
What?
Not parolees, Dakota
Right.
County Jail.
Yeah, the county jail, Dakota County Jail, but not parolees. My understanding is that there's a couple of homes in Hastings that do work with the Department of Corrections already and have that need met. So I don't feel like that's a need that we need to fulfill. So, no.
Yeah, and so I guess I would just add a comment. Facilities aren't doing this. That's the problem. facilities, you're right, treatment facilities are a multi-billion-dollar business. They're not doing this. Nobody's doing this except for these couple, a place in Mankato and a place in Rochester. Nobody's providing this. We're seeing friends, people that we grew up with slip through these exact cracks. And we refer to this as recovery capital, right? When you come into recovery, some people have good recovery capital and some don't. Some people have connections to the community and all their teeth and a car and a driver's license and a job skill. And most importantly, oftentimes, somewhere to go just to fill the gap, to get in. And people are falling through these cracks and nobody's doing this. And one of the reasons, and so there's sober housing, right, that like we talked about. You can't, with a house with 4 beds in it, you can't financially support this model where you're able to provide, because we're going to have a lot of beds, this house is not going to be full all the time, right? We're going to have empty beds, and that's why we need a big residential home to do this. Like, sure, if we could afford to have a few million and we could buy a Cochrane Center, that'd be great. But we'd probably just build a treatment center and become millionaires if we want to do that, right? So nobody's doing this, I guess, is my point. And so we're trying to
Fill the gaps.
fill the gaps. We're trying to find a way to make it work.
And if I can just speak to that piece about, you had mentioned that, not having the zero tolerance sort of thing. I mean, when somebody has a recurrence of symptoms, we're talking about a substance use disorder. It's such old mentality to refer to people as addicts and alcoholics, right? It's clearly a brain disease, a disorder that needs to be treated as such. And when somebody has a recurrence of symptoms, if somebody had a recurrence of another illness, you don't treat them like, well, get out. No, you increase the amount of support and the amount of treatment that they're receiving. So the mentality is not, oh, okay, you had a slip up, no big deal. No, it's okay. We're going to increase structure. We're going to increase accountability. We're going to increase support. We're going to bring additional supportive people on to make sure that you can be successful. It's not a, hey, you're struggling and you can just have a hot and a cot, until you can get into a treatment facility. That's not it either. This is very intentional, very thought through, and very, meant to be very structured and supportive so that people can be successful and have a safe place. Those letters that you're reading about people dying in our community from fentanyl poisoning and these things, this could fill that gap, you guys, so that decreases significantly. So people have a safe place to recover and they're not slipping through the cracks and not, they have a slip up and then they end up, like I said, sleeping on their old dealer's couch and then they're dead in a matter of weeks.
Did you know that girl that died in the hotel recently in Hastings was waiting to get into treatment, right? A couple more days she was in treatment.
Before I go further, John, is Emily still in there? Hear his hand?
Mr. Chair, maybe it may be appropriate at this point to call out to see if there's any further comments from the
anyone
public
else?
related to the public hearing. And then, we do have one from Emily here.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, guys. I know
That's
it's
okay.
down. I just have to say, as neighbor, given the information that I'm given and the business model, I'm going to have to oppose this, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Emily. Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Nope, nobody else.
Okay, I don't think either of them. No. Okay, nobody here. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and open it for official comments and questions from commissioners. Commissioner Teichen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tiffany, thanks for coming in. This is a really emotional subject, as you have witnessed, right? Congratulations on your sobriety. I applaud that. And thank you for looking to fill this gap. With all that said, I'm a very non-emotional person, and I just want to know the facts.
Sure.
And I want to make a decision based on those facts. And does this fit in to this particular site? And so I have a few questions for you, and then I'll let everybody ask questions, and I'll come back and have some comments about it. One of the recommendations is that all the people have to be, I want to read it just to make sure I get it right. No more than 10 individuals enrolled in qualified treatment program shall occupy the dwelling. I'm hearing those people aren't going to be in a qualified treatment program. Is that correct?
They'll either be enrolled or getting enrolled.
But so they won't be, some
Into-
people may not be enrolled.
It may take a
And
couple
I-
days.
And I'm not judging, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if we follow this, it sounds like people might be coming out of jail, they haven't found a treatment center yet, they won't be enrolled.
Right.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Somebody mentioned limiting staff. I don't know where that came from, but I can't find it in here. Is there anything in here about limiting staff?
No, I don't have any issues with the staff that's being proposed here. If there's two people there, I think.
But there's nothing in our document saying you can only have one person at night. Okay, thank you, because
I'm more looking at limitations based upon the individuals that would be in the house.
Will these people have cars?
We will limit the number of cars. So.
They could have cars, they might not have cars, right? That's from.
Yeah, not
okay.
the short-term emergency people cannot have vehicles.
And then that's my last question is, I'm still trying to wrap my head around, how many people are going to be in the house during the day? It sounds like you have some people that are going to be there for a long time and some people are kind of transitory. Is that right? And, I mean, could people come in during the day, more than 10 people, and they might leave during the day? Or I guess I was just confused about that.
So, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit confused by your question too. There will be, so if there's 10 residents that reside there, there may be 2 or 3 that are being taken to appointments by peer recovery specialists.
But there will be no more than 10 residents enrolled in your program?
Correct.
Okay, at any time in the
Correct.
building? There might be people come and go in during the day, but it never exceeds the 10?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Tyken. Commissioner Peters, I think your hand was up, go ahead.
One of the things that you've described, and maybe everyone else understands this better than I do, but you're describing that this fills an area that can't be fulfilled with the current programs available in Hastings. What is the difference between a sober house and what you're proposing? I guess I just don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So generally, sober houses are just that. It's a home, a residence where people who are in recovery, are sober, live. And the majority of the time, there's no supervision, there's no staffing. It's just a place that somebody can pay rent or get GRH funding, but they live there, and that's it. We're proposing a model where it is staffed 24/7, there's oversight, and there's peer recovery support. So it's supported, genuinely supported recovery living. So it provides accountability, support, and helps address those barriers that people experience in early recovery.
Okay, so then my follow-up question is, if this is a staffed facility, how is this different? Like, what kinds of requirements are there for a sober house? Do they have any licensing requirements through the city? If this is a special use permit, do sober houses also have a special use permit? And, what kinds of requirements are, for those kinds of special use permits?
Sure. Question hasn't come up too much, but sober houses, depending on the number of people they serve, they might be able to serve as a permitted use with not a special use permit requirement from the city. We are instituting in the last couple of years rental licensing requirements on sober houses and those type of group home facilities, so they would be bound by that. As far as special use permits go, I'm aware of one other sober house that we did have a special use permit issued. That was probably 10, 11 years ago elsewhere in the city.
Okay, so we currently have sober houses within the city that might have 4 to 6 people. Is that probably the limit on that?
Yes, that would be, I think 6 is that figure where if you go above 6 in a unit, then we would institute a special use permit review of that. And I think I'm correct in that, yeah.
So then this would be serving a similar client, but with staff and support. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Peters, thanks. Oh, okay. All right, sounds good. I didn't know if you were done there. Commissioners, any other questions? you have any follow-up?
Thank you, Commissioner. Just some comments around this in general, and I just want to get my questions out of the way first. I honestly, it's like we don't have enough information to me to make a good decision about this. I'd like to find out more about those other houses and other communities, and, you know, what does the police rate, what do the neighbors think? You know, how are those received in that community? Are they in a residential neighborhood? If we do, you know, move this forward, I think we should remove the in-treatment part of condition 4, because it sounds like they're not going to be in compliance with that. And, you know, so John, where are we at with the timing on this? Do we have more time or no?
Yeah, Commissioner, we do have more time under our review, so if the commission is not comfortable, we could table this for 2 weeks, come back. If there's some specific direction that you're requesting, if you were able to state that so that the applicant and staff would be knowledgeable of that. But yeah, we are within our requirements for tabling this if you so choose.
So we do have some time. We don't, to me, a lot of these issues are just the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how the impact of the neighborhood's going to be like. Is it going to be a disruption? Are we going to generate a lot of police calls? Do we have any facility to follow up on this in a year, you know, make this not a condition or a special use permit that goes in forward indefinitely, more of like an annual, or to me, really what we need is an annual license. We need the city to license these types of facilities. So if it becomes a problem to the neighborhood, that license could get revoked and the neighborhood could go back to the way it was.
The way that we've established the special use permit, well, I'll go back. Special use permits will carry forward indefinitely, provided that the requirements of the special use permit are being adhered to. Now, specifically within this one, there's the state licensure requirement, so if they were in violation of any of the state licensing requirements, that could be grounds for termination of the permit from our end. Also, from the rental licensing standpoint, same thing. So we're establishing those as parameters for if you operate within those two, you'd be adhering to the special use permit. If you didn't, that'd be grounds for revocation.
Is there something in the rental housing license that would say, hey, you had 50 calls from the police and all the neighbors are complaining, we could revoke that license?
Yeah, we do have performance measures in there.
Okay. To me, that would kind of give us a safety net of, it seems like it's a good thing, and the community needs it. The big question is, does it fit in the neighborhood? And do we give them a trial, or do we, you know, make them have more policies and procedures in place that we can see, like, here's how we're going to run the business, here's how we're going to admit people, et cetera. So I would, personally, I would wish we'd kind of review this, you know, call up Rochester, call up Mankato, find out what these types of facilities have as far as the community response. I mean, my wish, because I just don't feel like I have the data. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I see.
Commissioner Tyken? Commissioner Halberg?
First off, thank you. My mom worked as an administrator at Cochrane for my entire life. I grew up around addicts, and I do think that your program does fill a lot of the gaps. You know, we're sitting here, we're talking about, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? You can't control the what ifs, no more than you can control if your neighbor has a loud party next door, or your neighbor decides to get drunk and break into your garage, or a case of domestic abuse. So I think there's a lot of preconceived notions going on right now that I think we need to separate. I agree with the whole idea about, you know, the business model, seeing what it means to be enrolled, what's that look like, how long does it take to get someone enrolled into a recovery program, and have that, you know, within 2 days, this person needs to be enrolled in some kind of a program. And I know that there's, with the state of Minnesota, Dakota County, all the crisis programs, there's a lot of different avenues to find placement for people, if need be. that if they're not adhering to the program that you're trying to run. I'm concerned that we're letting some of the old stereotypes come in discussion. I do also question, the medical clearance of somebody. Can someone that went through a certification program really decide if someone's medically stable or not? So seeing what exactly that admission process looks like from step 1 to step 50, I think would make a lot of people feel a lot better. And defining terminologies like emergency placement, emergencies, things like that would bring a lot more clarity and confidence to the people on the commission, myself included. I do think this is a fantastic program that you're looking to run. But I agree with Commissioner Peckin. I think some more of the specifics just kind of laid out for us would be advantageous. The whole idea is this, appropriate for a neighborhood. You always run that kind of a risk. The traffic in and out. We talked about a 211 unit apartment complex. We don't know what that's going to do to the traffic in that area moving forward. It could be smooth as silk. It could be a gigantic nightmare. And Gino's going to hear car crashes from his back window. So I think if you could provide to us exactly what step 1 looks like to step 50, that would give a lot more credence and really ease some fears of what this might look like in a neighborhood setting. I think it's a great idea. I agree with no more than 10 people. And if when I saw the one staff member, I was like, whoo, one staff 24/7 overnight. But if you're willing to employ 2 staff, that there is a confidence builder. And to Commissioner Messina's point about what happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, what does that process look like? Who's going to transport that person? So just that black and white, I think, would really be beneficial for us moving forward. But I just want to thank you both for being here, and thank you for what you're attempting to do and to bring to town. So thank you.
I feel like I should change the languaging from short-term emergency treatment. So Doc's Recovery refers to it as pre-treatment housing. They have pre-treatment beds, right? So these are stabilized. And to answer your question about what that model looks like, there is a letter provided by Doc's Recovery House. It should be in your, and she kind of outlines that what a benefit this is to their entire community landscape. So I agree with you that there's honestly very rarely issues in homes like these, especially those that are supervised. Very rarely.
Yeah, and I think what he was saying is, when you compare it, I've heard the Cochrane facility mentioned several times. If you've been by there, it's up on a hill. It's not in the middle of a neighborhood, right? It's so what goes on there is happening, not in the middle of a residential neighborhood where people have owned their houses for 50 years. So that's where we're kind of tasked with, does this use fit this area per se? We're not actually on the referendum of, does this service need to be around?
Sure.
We all agree this service needs to be here. It's just that we have to make that determination is, does this use fit this particular area given the historical nature of it, what we've done with other homes, the things that we've made, the decisions we made in the past and so forth. So that's kind of where we are on that as far as what we're looking at. And the reason why I was asking about the policies and the procedures is because that does affect the use of the property. And it does affect, when we look at special use permits, we look at how it affects the properties around it as well. And since it's going to increase traffic, as if it was a rental, it's going to increase traffic, and I want to know, that's kind of what we do. So that's kind of where we're looking at. It's definitely not a referendum on the treatment part, because we all know it's needed. But, to your point, it's just more of, does what they do at the Cochrane on a smaller scale fit and is it appropriate for this particular area? And that's what we have to look at. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah.
But I do think that, and I'll just let it right now, I'm gonna be supporting a motion to table it so that we can come back and you can take some of our comments, hopefully, and concerns, and come back with some more specifics so that, you know, because for the staffing, facility must employ on-site treatment staff, but we just said it wasn't a treatment facility. You don't provide treatment, you're providing peer counseling. But yet it says on-site treatment, like he said. That's confusing because that's not telling us what it is. And then, as far as the staff goes, I just think you need more than one person there at all times. I really do, especially if we're gonna go all the way up to 10 people.
Sure.
If we were at 5, maybe 1 would be great.
Yep.
But the business model that I was trying to get to is you were saying that they would be referred out. Well, if you're 24/7, referrals happen in a 24/7 situation. You're gonna need additional staff to call in at 2:30 in the morning if and when something were to happen. I know you're the if-when thing, but you have to consider that since it's in the middle of this block of
Sure.
houses versus up at Cochrane. That's the only reason why I'm drilling down into some of those specifics,
Yep.
so. Anyway, just to clarify where I was going with those questions.
So I'm curious, how does Cochrane, if an incident happens at 2:30 in the morning, or if somebody gets kicked out on the street at Cochrane?
Well, I have no idea. I'm just saying that they don't have any specific houses right next to them.
Okay.
Where they have a concern of somebody roaming through, that kind of happens in a vacuum up there, where this is right in the middle of a residential area. So we have to take those comments into account too, as well as the testimonials and everything. So
Yeah.
I have to ask those questions on both
Sure.
sides, the tough ones and the not so tough ones,
Yeah.
just to make sure in my mind. But I do want to go ahead and I'm going to support a motion if somebody's going to go ahead and do it, is to table it just so that we can get some more details as to specifically how things are gonna look down the road to make sure that it's the right fit for this particular home. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I kind of wrote down 3 things, and maybe we could, if anybody else has any comments about information we want back, but, I really want to maybe have the city call Rochester and Mankato to find out about those houses. It sounds like we need to rework the conditions, because they don't really kind of align with what their services are providing, and then provide a better understanding for the process of intaking personnel, people. Is that?
I would add just in general, as far as the intake, the outtake, the general flow of people through. I think, just to go on to that, is just providing more information for everybody involved is never a bad thing. I think it just gives everybody a little bit of a sigh of relief that they know what's going on and can feel just a little bit better, so.
And to Commissioner Hallberg's point, we got to be comfortable, but we also have to make the community comfortable with it too. And I think providing that information will help everybody just feel more comfortable and make a better decision. Was there any?
Commissioner Peters, did you have something?
Yeah, just because I was kind of making the list of if we table it, what we do, and I think the two of you have covered a lot of them, but I also heard definition of terms and using the same kind of language. What does short-term, long-term, or pre-treatment, like what terms are we going to use, for that? And then the staffing model, both day and night. And then just a general operational hours, like what does a typical day look like? What can the neighborhood expect? And that would then include, quiet hours and things like that. And then also, just the client expectations. So what agreements, the clients who are gonna live there, what is that agreement? Because I think that would help everyone understand, what are the thresholds then for being allowed to continue being supported, or maybe finding a different situation for someone to be in. But I think, the definition of terms and then the client expectations or agreements were pieces that I hadn't heard in the reminder part. But I love that this would be a supported service versus a sober house that's not supported and staffed.
I feel like it is worthy to note that there is a facility called Bob's Place that's about 3 blocks, John, is it 3 blocks away from where this is located? I think they have 12 residents in that home. And that is a licensed board and lodge facility. I don't know the level of staffing that they have at that. But, you know, so there is
Yeah, and I
something in the
think-
residential neighborhood, right? That's,
Glad you brought that up. I did not know that.
Yeah.
See, and I think in a lot of sometimes in our packets, when we have a application come in front of us, there's research attached to it that what's happening in other areas, or there's another same model in this particular area. And we didn't get that in this particular packet. We don't really have anything to go on other than, here we go. But I didn't know that there was another one.
Yeah.
It's close. That's good information. So I think that's what we're aiming for, is to get all of that information to us in addition to the language on here, just so that we have some comparison, because we have nothing to compare it to. But most of the time on our applications, if there's other similar things in other cities, we get, a little bit of a comparison, and we just don't have enough information on this one, I think, to make an informed decision as to how that's going. So I didn't know about the other one. So just maybe for future, for that one. Commissioner Tyken?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, if we end up tabling this, and we hear back from Mankato, Rochester, that everybody loves it, we hear that there's some places that are similar, close by, that the city has been happy with, I'm gonna vote for it, okay? I just, as the chair said, I don't have the facts yet that I need to make that decision. So I just ask that we table it, and, so we can get those facts and make a good decision. But it sounds like we should be able to get those facts, and they all should be positive. So, thank you.
Commissioner LeBron, go ahead.
Yeah, along those lines as well, we've referenced the state licensing a lot, too. And then you've also mentioned different organizations, the county you've been in discussions with. A lot of times, just from my experience in other realms, might help the board or the body here to maybe, if you could, excuse me, arrange either, I don't know, a comment from them or somebody to come by, kind of take us through it a little more about this gap in services that you've referenced as well. So.
All right, Commissioner LeBron. Commissioner Maskey, go ahead.
I make a motion that we table the.
Your mic there. That's right, go ahead.
I make a motion we table the issue in front of us for 2 weeks, and we come back and we revisit Rise Up.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to table by Commissioner Maskey and a motion to second by Commissioner Tyken. Do we have any further discussion? I would just like to say the reason why we're tabling it, we're giving you the opportunity to come back with the additional information for us. I'd like to see the more with the Bob's Place and some other, just so that we have something tangible to look at and compare and make an informed decision. So that's kind of where we are on that.
so do I reach out to these different organizations or somebody on?
Well, our staff will.
You'll do
we're
the
gonna
research,
ask staff to go
contact
ahead
them.
and,
Okay.
and we're gonna change, basically the motion is gonna be to redo the recommendations and language.
Okay.
As far as treatment versus non-treatment.
Yep.
And then do some of the, some research on some of the other facilities that are close by. So we have that.
And I do my homework.
John, can we get that done?
I may look to you for some assistance as well.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. If you could
Yeah.
work with staff on that, that would be much appreciated. Any other further discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank
We
you.
really do appreciate it, and I really do want to mention, I read the testimonials, very powerful, very personal. A lot of people put some very personal things out there, didn't have to. I won't go over them here, but they're available, right? As part of the public. If they want
Right,
to read them.
we'll put this in the following packet. Just a
Yeah,
point of
so-
clarification, Mr. Chair, too, so we will be tabling this for 2 weeks. That'll be the Planning Commission meeting on February 28th.
That's correct. And in the interim, we're asking staff, I don't like the word direct, we're asking staff to work with the applicant to more closely define the recommendations, some of the language, treatment versus medical versus emergency, and then getting some information on Bob's Place and some other areas in like Red Wing or Mankato or where, I'm not sure where that was, so that's what we're asking for.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
It was a long night. Thank you. We do appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. All right,
No problem.
next up is public hearing. Or a public hearing, it looks like, number 6 for Matthew Goebel, special use permit 2022-15, operation of retail service uses auto repair within the I-1 zoning district, 2550 Millard Avenue. Justin?
Yeah, thank you. Retail service establishments are permitted uses by special permit in the industrial park zoning, which would include the proposed retail auto body repair shop. The applicant is proposing to use the existing site for retail use of auto body repair because it would be directed towards retail customers. He's also proposing to use it as a training center for auto body technicians. The applicant proposes just some minor interior remodeling, and the site is 1.2 acres and has 2 buildings on the site, 7,000 square foot shop building and a 5,000 square foot office and shop building, combination building. And the site was developed in 2001. Since the industrial park isn't really designed or intended for retail businesses, we allow some uses that are more retail oriented there after reviewing a special use permit to make sure that there's not any special conditions that should be implemented to make sure it works in the proposed site. Some of the things we look at are traffic concerns or parking issues or concerns with design of the site. These are the couple pictures of the buildings on the site. The zoning code requires in that zoning district anything that's stored outside has to be screened. In the past, with these special use permits for auto repair in the industrial park, we haven't allowed this sale or storage of vehicles or allowed the storing of unlicensed or inoperable or damaged vehicles outside. Oh, I thought I had another one. As far as the recommendation goes, it's for approval with the conditions in the staff report. A couple of the conditions that are specific to this use are ones that we've done in the past, which is that there's no retail sales of automobiles from the site and that no storage of inoperable or unlicensed or damaged vehicles. Notice was provided to property owners within 350 feet, and we didn't receive any response from that. So staff can answer any questions. Otherwise, there's a public hearing required for this, and the applicant is in attendance tonight also.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Other than the applicant, is there anyone that wishes to speak? Anyone on Zoom? Nope. Okay, close the public hearing. Commissioners, I'll open it up to any questions. I assume you're, thank you for hanging in there, appreciate it. I just have one quick question. Number 5 on the recommendation, there should be no outdoor storage of inoperable, unlicensed, or damaged vehicles. I'm assuming that excludes the situations where a vehicle is towed there as a result of being in a crash. I mean, it's got to be temporarily outside if it happens overnight or something. That's not covering that, right? It can be outside for a little bit.
Right, just not stored.
Right, just not stored per se. But obviously it's going to be outside, if somebody has it towed there in the middle of the night kind of thing. Okay, just wanted to make sure that we're there. That's all the question I had. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't. Is this the old sprinkler irrigation company? Yeah. That's what I thought. I didn't know they moved. Okay.
He's just retiring.
Oh, he's retiring. All right, cool. Commissioners, do you have any questions, comments? Pretty straightforward? Nope. If not, I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Albert?
I'll make the motion to approve the special use permit, auto body repair and training, 2022-15 retail service operation at 2550 Millard Avenue with the recommendations.
And we have Commissioner LeBron,
Second.
second. Okay, any further discussion, new discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you for hanging in there. Have a good night.
Yeah, and the recommendation will carry forward to City Council at their Tuesday, February 22nd meeting.
Welcome to Hastings. Are you affiliated with Phil's, right?
I own Phil's.
You own Phil's? Okay. That's one. All right. He retired too. He retired. Wow, everybody retired. All right, have a good night. All right, we do have another public hearing.
Mr. Chair?
This one should be fairly quick. City of Hastings.
I just want to make a comment about that last one real quick. That's a classic example of we all understand what an auto body place does, what their business is like, how they get cars towed in. My only question was about number 5, which you asked already. I just wanted to point that out, that we all understand that. We all have the facts already about what they do, and that's why it was such a quick public hearing, and we moved
Oh,
it
absolutely.
forward. So,
Yeah, and the building is already set up for it.
Right.
I mean, it's literally,
It's an appropriate area.
Right.
yeah.
I mean, it's an industrial.
I just wanted to make the clarification, the difference between the last one, where we spent, a lot of
Yeah, absolutely.
time trying to absorb what was going on versus something
Absolutely.
that we spent a minute on. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. All right, City of Hastings ordinance 2022-11, parking for apartments. This is a public hearing.
Yep, Mr. Chair, I'll be brief on this one, given the time of the hour here. We do have a public hearing to consider amendments to the parking code. We can go in 2 directions tonight, folks. So this is scheduled as a public hearing. We can open that public hearing right now, and I would suggest you do that. If you would like to table action and discussion on this to the 28th meeting, I'm more than happy to do that. I'd leave that up to you.
Okay, well, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone on Zoom?
Nope.
Nope. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we want to table this to the next meeting, or do we want to take it up tonight?
I'd move to table it.
Okay, Commissioner LeBron. We have a motion from Commissioner LeBron to table it for the next meeting.
Yep.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Commissioner Maskey on a second. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That will be tabled to our next meeting on February
28th.
8th. Other business.
Other business, well, we've got a few things for the 28th meeting, so we'll bring those back. As far as other items at this point, I'm not aware of any new business coming for that meeting, so I will leave it at that.
All right. Commissioners, any other business? If not, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Commissioner Tyken, second.
Second.
Commissioner Romans, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.